Thoughts were clubs in his head. As such could happen at all. The whole class disappeared from his native school and found himself in an unfamiliar, bizarre world that smelled of a wonder and danger. At that moment, the girl reached out to the glowing plates in front of Haruto and suggested a step, quite close. But the guy was just standing, not believing his own eyes. Immersed in spells, the hero with the force of domestication together with the girlfriend of childhood overcomes fear. The girl exclaims, "The white flash will blind eyes." The air buzzes from tension. A few days before, the heroes still lived in a regular school life. The sun rolled across the sky, the crowd was raging by the students, the morning air smelled of fresh bread and free hopes. In the class, a frantic discussion was boiling. Everyone wanted to say their new manga. Incredible, whispering someone with delight, their eyes glowing. The impression broke out when the magician faded at that moment. The air trembled, the ashes fell, and silence fell with a heavy wave, as if the walls themselves had fallen in surprise. Along with the crowded crowd, Haruto Tsutsui suddenly heard a spoiler about the death of the magician. His heart was squeezed. Everything was cut inside, because he did not expect such a finale. The gaze slid at classmates, stopping on a neighbor at the desk, a loud Yohinambi, from whom he always fled clumsiness and unwanted sincerity, annoying to icy ants. To the class, like a breeze, the girls ran and cheerfully shouted at the boys. Lively voices mixed, they also read the same manga. The class after the break included Magumi and Mina, and the boys came to life immediately. In their eyes, hope broke out. The request to spend the evening flew from their mouths, like a desirable whisper. It seemed that each of him was lost in a basketball club. The guy said that the talent was hungry for training, so at night he poured a playground with a knock of a ball, and then, suddenly, a nun shouted. The voice sounded clearly like a bell, and Joey stopped, wary of looking into her eyes, not understanding why such a girl was looking for talking to him. At that moment, a small letter trembled in the palms of the palms. She stretched him Haruti and said silently, "Pass it on her aunt." Having reached out, the hero easily and kindly accepted that sheet, feeling even a little fresh smell of ink. When he tried to pick up the girl, an angry yohi snatched among the crowd. In the eyes of the boy there was a jealous suspicion, as if there was something more here, and on Facebook there were already rumors. But it was at that moment Magumi, distracting his thoughts, gently explained. Boys were just friends. There was always a sincere friendship between them. Mina, when he heard it, was upset. Why is a girlfriend weave such rumors for everyone? Hearing this from Mahumi, Joey decided that our hero is extremely lucky, because he was a failure, but luck so bright by his side. The mine rushed forward, rustling the skirts, wanted to stop the one who struck the hero on his back with strong blows. It was at this moment that the elder approached, gently called Yokius to return. He moved to the desk with lightning, and the mine remained to stand in front of our hero, like a shadow that was not disappearing. The girl's gaze ducky in the boy so persistently that he only silently saw it in her eyes, and in a moment she turned away, sighed. She was indifferent, and slowly disappeared beyond the door of the class. From the back it came, these two clumsy for so many years together, as if sparks are pouring and words stumble on the road. As if not believing the eyes, the hero looked around and met Karen's gaze. She smiled warmly and said that in his place, she would have long wanted to be friends with such a charming girl. The hero looked at Karen with a slight enthusiasm, and the girl caught a hint. He sincerely thinks that she could become a friend of Yokius, although at heart he felt everything is much more complicated. The words of the girl were not rest. He should be happy. Memories of their fun children with mine came to life with warmth and laughter, as if in the room it smelled of sun and old books. At this point, Mina carefully monitored how the hero was talking to Karen's neighbor, and through his clenched teeth hid dissatisfaction, almost biting her lips, watching this scene. Maguma noticed the strange behavior of the mini, threw her cry, and moved to her girlfriend, and suddenly behind a sharp roar thundered, as if something had fallen or crashed. The loud roar rolled so that the students clung to desks and chairs, trying not to fall. Karen screamed, and the hero reached out. "Hold on me!" It was at that moment on the young man's shoulder invisible weight, squeezed, pressed, slipped on the skin and screwed her breath. Suddenly the hero barely had time to pick up a mine. She did not believe that she was in his hands, but felt the warmth of touch, quickly escaped, and, leaving the smell of spring wind in the air, disappeared rapidly. The hero thought that she was so angry that he lifted her, and near the mine, all red, grabbed the air, barely breathing after everything. Behind her back, Karen froze, noticing the sudden silence. At the same moment, when the guy tried to look around, the world around changed, and no longer a school, but a strange man with shimmering plates, and all the students with him stood near him. The look was circling around the room. Every movement, every whisper of shadows kept in tension. The mysterious signs danced near the lantern as if I tell. Where did I hide between which walls? The man stopped in front. In his eyes the surprise flashed. He did not expect so many people. The clumsy cloak came from the shoulders, and in front of them appeared as a blade, the princess, surprised and annoyed, because everything had to go scrapes, and it happened quite differently. The boys were confused with the boys. Some sore, whispered, "So it is so beautiful," as if the wind seemed to be frozen in the room. Our Karen hero was just silent, and Mina, she looked back. She didn't like it. It was then that a man approached the princess and gently advised to tell everyone what happened. The girl listened carefully to the advisor, nodded, and quietly thanked for the care. Squeezing her coughing, she was strongly blamed, whispering in the air when her words were dragged and revealed to everyone the truth about what happened here. The class stopped, and the girl, smiling lightly, called herself Felicia Elmond, the princess of the kingdom of Elmond. The faces of the boys were frozen. Everyone listened to the girl and feverishly thought where it was hidden by the mysterious kingdom of the elements, which no one had heard even whispers. Karen looked back to the hero, hoping for the idea, but in Haruto's eyes only surprise. The guy spread his hands in confusion, they say, no thought in his head. Something came to life in the trembling fingers of the girl. She carefully, like a wind driver, began to control invisible force. Suddenly, a magical wedding ring broke out on the palms of the princess, and a fairy tale world unfolded before his eyes. She already knew. It is not their home, but the legend was calling them here, to the heroic fate. The boys' eyes were rounded. No one could imagine such a surprise from the iron box. Finally, the hero comes. Everything around is not an ordinary world, but a foreign, unknown earth. Somewhere smells like damp, and heard a strange rustle in branches, as if the air was breathing differently. Karen's smile flashed like a sunshine. She felt what power the hero was carrying, and the curiosity in her look pulled. And the young man, caught that look, did not realize what it was about. Karen felt that it was the law of the genre, and already intelligently solved this game. And the young man, shrugging his shoulders, denied, everything is not true for him. He does not fit into the rules. Their conversations sounded quietly, but behind the backs of the alarming views. And Yuk suddenly grabbed a chair, looking for an answer in his views, which means it all means. The words were scattered with an empty bell. I did not want to hear any sound. Already the soul was tired of this confused lapé, and the boys, noticing how the young man flashed, numb from surprise. The cool headman, as always, tried to quench Yoshu's. Look how all it looks to the side, like a scene from the manga that they arrived in the lesson. Yoki just smiled bitterly. They are no longer the manga heroes for a long time. He invited the elder to look around. It was all incomprehensible, which breathes an unknown. Because what power could move the whole crowd to another world? Joche trembled and whispered that he was definitely magic. Something invisible in the palms of the princess had shimmed, as if the whole witchcraft world was hiding between her fingers. The words about magic walked through the hall as a slight crash. In someone's eyes, hope broke out, and someone, when she rapped, could not believe. Did the way home really open? Frightened whispers were drawn around. Haruto's smile seemed to say, everyone dreams of a house, and why not keep that moment? The girl looked at him, looking for support, but the guy was silent, losing the words under pressure from silence. The princess saw confusion in her eyes, but she was sure. The legend says they would fulfill the task, and everyone would return home whole and unharmed. Hearing about the task, he suddenly realized, apparently, she will have to carry the head of the king of demons. The elder, noticing how the guy reacted hard to these words, hurried to reassure the young man. The princess felt the truth in these words. Their country really calls the heroes every few centuries to become a shield against the invasion, again and again. Each time the threat is changed. The dragon roars, then the legendary demon, which he once mentioned, slowly emerges from the twilight. The princess confessed that no one knows what would happen this time, and in her heart her cold moved anxiety. The elder was surprised by his eyebrows, but he heard these words, shouted even louder. Unless you cannot know this, because you will not return home until you win the unclear. The girl had to apologize how a man approached nearby. Noticing the guests, he smiled cunningly, and in the room there was a tension, like a rustle on the threshold. Suddenly, a brother appeared next to her, and a young man called Rex Elmond with a proud look, the first prince of the kingdom. The girls tried up, whispering brilliantly, without taking their eyes off the prince. The princess, without listening to them, explained her brother quietly. They wait for one hero, and the guests were 30. Probably she was disturbed. Whether hospitality was enough for everyone. The elder intervened in the conversation, worried. They invited more people than they planned, and now the place could not be enough. This thought squeezed his chest, causing anxious breathing. There was no fairness here. They were called without permission, ordered to execute another's mystery, and promised nothing. And as real kings, they were waiting for honor. Otherwise, there will be no movement. So the young man said, squeezing his fists. The boys rising, everyone picked up the words of the leader and demanded a worthy meeting. The princess, seeing excitement, hastened to reassure them. The promised royal reception will still be waiting, even if suddenly there was a danger. Yoga watches how the girl begins to justify, and in the air is trembling. How can they be trusted? The Middle Ages are still breathing in these walls, and the guy is lost. Did at least some bath here, where the residents disappeared? Where did this strange echo of? It was necessary to speak louder. The guards were talking to him, forbidding him to make thundering with words in front of the royal person. The quarrel came out. The air was barely noticeably shuddered from the new tension. The princess is already reaching out, begging to stop the guards, when Joey firmly intercepts the one who has managed. In the air, the tension is throbbing. The team of heroes is heard, and the guards are sinking. The vigilant look catches as Karen understands. He again looks for an excuse to quarrel, and her friend only nods quietly, as if everything is going on the usual scenario without any changes. The warm palms of Princess Rex's brother touched the face of Joe, so softly that his heart was squeezed, and he called the young man a hero. This was surprised by Joe because he never waited for such respect. The brother promised to provide food and warn about the evil, hoping that the guy would finally be quenched, but for Yoichi he remained unpleasant and annoying, and he only demanded his will. The brother of the princess, recently smiling, became formidable. The cold squeezed, the smile broke on the predatory Oskel, and everyone, feeling this anxiety, sought the cause of unclear fear. As soon as Joe nodded to consent, the tension slept instantly. The air became easier, and a quiet relief was reigned around. The prince, rubbing his hands, wondered. Their interest remained for him as a mystery, as what they were so much hoped that someone would be able to explain what they needed. A hand suddenly flew from the crowd. It was a Magumi, a girlfriend who surprised her determination. The prince saw it without hesitation. The girl came to the girl. He asked to enter his room in the evening. His voice trembled in the shade of the lamp. A wave of astonishment swept the class. Cheeks flashed, and in his eyes frozen the question. Why did a girl settle in his room? The surprise shuddered the air, when even Magumi, like everyone else, frozen in uncertainty. Is it really so important? The views stuck in the prince. The dumb disadvantage was in the hall, and he only cast a confused look at Mahum. What was here? Because he considered it honor. The confident response of Magumi immediately dispelled doubts. She agreed, and Mina was surprised by her courage and trembled, watching how he was going to a stranger, and he just smiled, noticing it. By the way, Rex noted, draft is possible only with mutual agreement. It seems that one of them wanted it, but there was no hurry. They were waiting for the journey and the promises of awards, but all later. After Heard in the Heart, Nadia glowed in the heart. Maybe magic is really allowed here, and all those mysterious forces are only fictions that scatter between words. Karen just smiled cunningly, and her character looked at his eye, twisted his eyebrows, and thought that the wind of a new thought touched his cheek. Suddenly, as if a flash, the prince showed how he was able to control the fire, and after the smoldering sparks came, the boys will also be able to master it. As soon as he showed everyone, some glowed with joy, others faded, the fright flashed in his eyes. The prince added that in addition to magic there is also the ability, and at the same moment the flame in his hand went away, leaving the smell of burning and the quiet rustle of ashes in the air. Megumi's eyes were lit as she heard of skills. She only cast a curious look towards the prince, and Mina was surprised that her girlfriend was always ready for surprises. Karen, sitting next to the hero, shuddered, like Magumi, and reacted exactly as a mine. In movements echoed common feelings. The hero, designed to this world, distinguishes unusual power, amazing magic and skills that are only dreaming of the local. The smell of smoke, whispering of voices. The prince looks in the fire, waits for approval, hopes that these papers are truly worthy, and the fire will confirm it. In Yohei, a spark broke out in his eyes. Looking at the young speech, he decided, if it is a reality, then he was also in the game, and could not hide the thirst for his strength. The boys, stunned, did not look away from him. He changed directly in his eyes. Suddenly, everyone was fascinating. Skills are a real wonder. Someone dreamed of mastering magic, and the guy with a smile noticed that many would like to try it. Karen's gaze slid on Haruto, a flame of curiosity in her eyes, hope in his chest, and then she turned sharply, catching his breath. The smile flashed on her face. It looks like it is a little. Meanwhile, the prince added, his sister is well versed in the analysis, and will surely help. The princess nodded happily. So the girl suggested, let's find out what every guy is capable of now, she said quietly, as if calling for the game, and in the air hangs up. A moment, and the look of a fascinated girl slid on everyone in the crowd. Magic and sharp mind were burning in her eyes. After the team, the analysis turned on. The careful look slid again, and before everyone, a label with data flashed. The abilities of the boys, as a selection, were amazed at even one princess. Especially Johann had an incredible power. The young man did not believe his ears as soon as he heard it, and joyful surprise, along with passionate curiosity, broke out in his chest. What was the power? By the way, the girl wanted to add, taking her eyes and barely blushing, because they came from the world without magic and skills, so it is better to study everything in their own experience. The princess asked the hero Haruto with a request for help, and when he realized that it was about him, the surprise punched on his face. He did not believe that he had chosen him. The girl was convinced that Haruto had to give an example, because his strength was striking. Hearing this, Haruto fell out. His eyes expanded, and Yoga and mine were surprised to catch his every movement. Deadly offended, Joey asked the princess to stop. He was certain he was not a rival. Already the guard glanced wickedly, and the elderly whispering, sat up. Otherwise the guards will throw again. All you have to do is listen to the head and take their place imperceptibly, sliding on a chair, so as not to cause dissatisfaction with others. The vigilant look slid on the hero. His eyes were weighed every rice, and in the air smelled with tension. The guy immediately felt it and realized dissatisfaction was read in every movement. Invited by the princess, he stepped forward, squeezing his palms nervously, and sinking in a trembling anticipation, while all the views stuck into him, and the silence swelled like a tight stretch. The prince's vigilant look did not let any little things, and he squeezed his jaws, drilling the hero with his eyes and stopping in tension, waiting for the next step. In the eyes of the hero, the boredom stretched like a gray fog, and the princess nodded quietly and pointed her hand where she wanted him to finally look. The hero turned sharply. First surprise, then the cold of the fear squeezes his throat. Just in front of him, behind the rods of the cage, a terrible monster has frozen. The wool is drawn. His eyes are burning. At first, the eyes were greeted. The eyes refused to believe in the beast that grew up in the darkness before them. February, like a nightmare, with the smell of fear in the air. It seemed altogether that a white tiger was hiding in the cage. But the lightning current on his wool was frightened, because it never happened on Earth, and no one could understand that it was a miracle. The princess stepped on the cage, barely touched the lattice, and whispers, "Here is Rail, Demo Malyuk. Now it is even funny. But it will grow, it will become a horror, because now he is strong, like 100 soldiers." In a moment, the tiger has already bent his back to jump. Only open the cage. The hero, having frozen in surprise, felt anxious under the skin, and the princess reminded that Haruto has a gift to tame. In the next moment, she pulled the whole body in his back, squeezing so firmly that the guy was confused and did not understand the reason. But through her whisper he heard, such a technique would not help with the majority, but he was able to break the wall. The mine sighed hard. The girl held his hand firmly, and in her glance, jealousy, which fell out every time the hero did not notice the obvious. The princess was asked to stretch the palm of the tiger. The surprised hero realized that her movements are induced to meet with a predator. He whispers, "Enough, I ask," and the tiger is already straightened, growls, paws are ready to tear the meat. The chain rolled, the cage shuddered. The tiger growls, the paws are torn, and the princess whispers through the noise of the heart, "Do not be afraid, just tell the name of the skills." And the hut of the claw whispering. In the eyes of Yoheios he was ejected, seeing how the hero of the families he was quietly pushing. It is time to act. It is enough to wait. Hearing this, the young man only nodded, and cautiously, like a thin ice, did everything as the princess ordered. The next moment she hugged him, picked up his hand, and the hero, stretching his palms, said the spell loudly. And before the boy, a magical hoop twisted in the air. Once the prince and princess were seen when they showed their skills. Everyone froze, smiles swollen around. Karen shone with the boys, and someone from the crowd shouted what his power was. The dazzling flash cut his eyes. The hero took his breath confusedly, held his palms in front of him. He did not believe. Did it really happen? The door of the cage suddenly clicked. The hero did not even have time to understand how he had a wide-open exit, and the tiger rushed on him with a roar, and the young man broke into a wild cry. It was barely over. Already in the ants of fear, the tiger gently touched the wet from the sweat of the hero's face, and suddenly, murmur, hugged the guy with his paws. The tiger suddenly knocked him down and freshened him with a fluffy tongue. And the princess, following this tenderness, whispered, "The ability to taming even a predatory heart. Look like a gentle tiger licks the hero." The princess remembered that this force allows you to conquer any enemy. And here the hero lay under the paws of a tiger, who licked his face with a hot tongue, and could not believe that he was really able to curb even such a beast. The mind among the boys frozen. Her eyes were surprised to slide in every movement of the young man, as if for a moment the air between them. Haruto class suddenly opens another world. The air is anxious, the danger is ahead, and they have to become heroes and overcome a dark threat. The strength of Haruto is a domestication. It allows you to break someone else's will, bowing the enemy to humility, as a wild wind bows the grass. This power is a real gift. No enemy will pass, noticed the princess. And the hero was surprised. Mina, having frozen near the tiger, could not look away from him. While Karen was talking to the princess, the young man pressed against the wall and stroked the tiger, which was hard to purse, and struck it like a playful kitten. Karen came up holding his breath. The creature was so sweet that made the hero look away from his cat. She looked enthusiastically how the hero tames him, and the guy only looked at her in surprise. The girl glanced thoughtfully. "I wonder how his name is." The hero tried in surprise to squeeze what was about, but Karen was already smiling. "This tiger is now his beast. It's time to choose his name. Paradise. That's what he called it, a hero," he murmured with pleasure, until Karen laughed, considering such words too simple. But his harsh look forced her to silence. The idea of Karen suddenly broke out in the memory of the young man. She also had a special gift, and curiosity was troubled inside. What does she possess? Karen remembered her ability to mix as if the aroma of herbs had already poured in the air. She confidently said that she could create a potion from everything that would happen. "Well, nothing heroic," twisted in Karen. Though we wanted to hear a completely different, a piece was torn in his finger. But our hero believed. Karen was mistaken. She was handed in any success. Karen leaned against the wall next to the hero, clasped his fists, and thought, now he would be taught to the full, and the guy, sliding his eyes on his comrades, thought about their abilities, while the tiger was pushing his nose mournfully. He did not stop. The power splashed in every movement. Yogai spread the floor of the wall, and even in his chest he was squeezed with surprise, where so much force came from. Incredible steepness captured him on the throat. The princess noticed him a special power, the ability that multiplies the body, and in this way he was swaying. They say, it is easy to grind the stone wall of the court magician. Clear and strong skill is just for yoga. Turning to a quiet voice, he saw behind himself the old man Kakaru. The look, calm, barely outwardly, like a cold shadow, slid behind Yoga, as if appreciating him in silence. Yoki, running to the young man, squeezes him in impatient embrace and whispers in his ear. "Well, what the skill has received the headman, tell us. Because the heart does not stand this intrigue." The head of the village in silence reached out, as if stopping the wind, and asked Yogia to retreat. This unexpected gesture of the guy's burning as a surprise. The next moment is a crunch, and the ceiling, where there were still traces, will pour down into the roar of fragile fragments. Just from heaven, like a lightning, someone gave up a boy on his shoulders. He walked slowly, and he had no idea that he would suddenly fall on top of him. On this, Joe only silently stared at the elder who corrected the glasses. The guy sat in front of the pane, and around everyone kept his breath, waiting for him all right. The gaze of old age slid to Yoche, and the verse came. The one who before them has the gift of prediction sees the future, at least for a moment, like a shadow in fire. At that moment, Joe watched everyone. He noticed how Magumi leaned over a boy with a wounded head. Her hands were emitted calm and treated wounds, and it became clear this girl was able to heal. The old age's views were sliding over the lively conversations of the young men, and suddenly a mind flashed in the crowd like a quiet shadow in the sun. The pearls in the palms of the Princess Lunko are scaly. Such a fascinating Mina power. They intensified the magic, connect it from Yoch, and the hero will become invincible. But these words are only a quiet slogging. Behind the back of the band, the hero from Karen was staring at the crowd and did not understand why everyone gathered. Karen at that moment again felt the familiar warmth of his childhood. Noticing his look, turned to the mine. He barely sigh, the young man explained. She now avoids him, and the tiger near them softly murmurs something incomprehensible, catching every movement with his back. So quietly, yo-he-he-he-he, greeted, smiled warmly, and began to explain in confusion why he was not nearby. Not understanding where he went, nearby the same man who recently helped the princess to install a target carefully twisted the pole, and the wood was quietly cracking under his hands. Princess, with eyes full of sparks, turned to a mine. Will she not try to hit the target with magic? Mine sighed in confusion and quietly confessed, she has never had ever. The princess understood, first demanded the impossible. So the sounds of the morning rustle decided that it was time to introduce the girl to everyone. The flames danced on the palms, the heat touched the skin, and it whispered softly, try the same, mine, showing the witchcraft that flashed like a spring dawn. The princess inhaled slightly. The aroma of the fresh wind lifted the bow and arrow with a rustle flew, hitting the very heart of the target. Fascinating views were chained to its daring accuracy, smoke slowly bubbling, and the girl suddenly felt, here it is, the very essence of magic. Mina only looked in confusion, silently asked the princess to understand her despair. Karen, standing next to the hero, listened to every movement, sliding her gaze around the room, noticed. The princess had something strange, and quietly hoped that the hero also understood it. And the young man added, the nobles were always so. When Joey approached, in the air smelled incense. The girls were catching invisible sparks. A mine with the princess was surprised by his eyes. At that moment, magic broke out in the palms of Yoga, and the princess, holding her breath, did not believe her eyes. In a moment, a flame broke out of Yokeus's hand. A giant fire, from which Princess Fermini rushed to the side, feeling the air rings and buzzing over his ears. The next moment, all the students broke into a cry. The flames were real. The heat ran on the skin, smelled of smoke. The elder, catching, as Yokeus again flashed something a strange, pressed voice. He asked to reduce the flames, but a guy with a hot palm that was shaking, sighed, he could not do it. The fire threw the fire on a mine, and the hero rushed to help when suddenly someone's hand stretched to her, and a refreshing ring of water surrounded the girl, squeezing into hot sparks. In an instant, the fire that spiked and spinning around Yohi faded under a cold shower, which poured the prince, leaving only a couple and the smell of dampness. Put on gloves, he assured. Don't be afraid until I'm here. Nothing will happen. The girls, seeing the prince, shined again. Will the real noble save everyone in this room? At once the smell of roses spilled in the air when the princess, seeing her brother, did not believe her eyes. Could she imagine that he would save them all? Joy from wet clothes shake the cold, stared at the prince, and suddenly caught his mockery. His heart was burning with anger, and the prince, with a smile, was indifferent to his gaze past him. It was then that the brother turned to the mind she can try anything, and he is nearby. Guards as if a wall, and in his voice the warm sun of courage. In February, Joey grabbed the girl by his hand and said hotly that she was already busy, and on his part, he grabbed rigidly. Suddenly anger broke out at the mines, so unexpectedly it was, until the heart rapidly baked in his chest. The magic circled around her, the energy was stuck, and the guy flew away, as if torn by the breath of the storm. Yoki did not feel like he was picked up by the wind, and the prince rushed, covering his sister with his own body. Karen froze nearby, wondering the unexpected act of a girl whose heart caused this miracle. Haruto did not realize what was happening. Mina sat sideways. The same light circles were spinning around her as the princess once, and the prince only whispered. The ability came out of control. The order sounded firmly. It was necessary to reassure the girl, and the prince, turning to the princess and guards, barely winked. The princess nodded obediently, and 2 guards followed her. In a moment, the princess and one of the guards tried to reassure the mine. Soft movements and calm words restrain its explosive power. The prince also came to the rescue, and suddenly it became clear. Here she, the real magic of heroes, like a secret wind that carries on the wings of salvation. The princess rejected a powerful wave. The fascinated air thickened. The magic of the mine wore its invisible nets, and behind it was already a guard. Only the prince stubbornly tried to get back on his feet. The princess realized that if it continues, everything will go out, so she focused, breathed on full breaths, and tried to analyze the situation. The glances were sliding on the faces around. There was a special one here, and suddenly the idea appeared. Only the hero Haruto has the power to help. Only he can. Princess's gaze touched the hero, and she silently asked Gratu to tame him. In response, the surprise spilled into the chest of the hero. He even kept his breath, hearing the desire of the princess. Smiles were melted, everyone retreated and stared at the hero. Many realized he is able to conquer, can make it his slave, from which he wrapped in the air with tension and interest. At that moment everyone felt, it will look like a tiger nearby. The wildness swirled even in a breath. Some whispered with horror, some did not believe. However, Yoki still intervened, though in vain. The princess did not want to listen, but only insisted, do it, and as soon as possible. If everything goes so on, the mine will become a demon, absorbed by its own power, as the princess explained, noticing the hero's hero. The guy saw the girl's teeth changed and dark stripes on his cheeks. Feeling, no one more, only to him, the hero moved forward. Under the feet of gravel, the air smelled with dust, and he boldly went to the mine. Doubts squeezed the heart. How to conquer someone who is nearby and whose eyes, trusting, warm, look straight into the soul. The verse staring into the depths of his own mind, he suddenly froze. His unexpected hand touched him from his back, as if a cool wind in silence. Karen explained to Haruto that time was lost. It was necessary to act. Feeling her support, the hero, as if breathing fresh air, gathered his last strength. Looking at the mine, he felt new demonic features in her look, and the cold on the skin suggested that he should act immediately. The determination pushed the hero forward, and when the princess smiled with gentle certainty, her voice like a quiet breeze, reassured. Everything would be right. The hero thanked the prince, and he looked carefully as if he were looking for an answer. But the thoughts of the young man were stubbornly kept by minds. He asked to wait, because now the prince had to help her. The next moment the hero reached out to the mine. He tamed it, heard the tension inside the inside, even a moment, and the explosion could break the air. Suddenly the princess clenched his hands firmly in his own. Warm fingers trembled with excitement and whispered, "A little more. Do not give up. Go forward like the wind through the spring leaves." The next moment, seeing Haruto, Mina reached out to him with already long nails. Horns peeked out of her hair, and his lips trembled from the half-conscious whisper of his name. The vivid memory of childhood broke out in the memory of the hero, slamming him with the warmth of those days when they ran barefoot under birds, singing, and laughed in the morning. In the memories, the schoolyard comes to life. Weeps are crying. Tears roll on the cheeks. Her excited sorry hangs in the air between her and Haruto. Touching the girl's top, the hero gently said that everything was fine, although the pain in his heart echoed her guilt. A bright smile illuminated his face when gently promised to protect her always. Warm silence and the aroma of evening herbs were hanging in the air. The promise does not give him rest. She calls from the past, forces her to pull her hands to the mine through the shadows and whisper memories. A sudden flash, a bright, like a lightning, cut the space. The boys were involuntarily swollen, and Karen with the prince did not look, trying to catch every movement and shadow. The flash went out, and in silence our hero kept unconscious Nina. Her hair was barely trembling, and the skin smelled of ozone after a thunderstorm. The princess, approaching Haruto, glowed with joy. Everything succeeded. Lady Nina is now quiet. The boy lies like a shadow unconscious. The air throbs and the sweet smell of victory. Suddenly a classmate has understood. This skill really affects people. And the hero noticed fear in their eyes, felt their gaze, but could no longer retreat. At that moment she opened her eyes, grabbing the breath of the night, and everyone around them was dying. The heavy air comes out of the chest, the leaves rustle above the head. The hero is struck under the tree and catches every smell of wet earth. Today he allows himself to just be and dissolve in silence. Karen quietly sat down, felt, sighing a little relieves the soul, and the guy himself apparently thought so. However, Karen noticed, it is worth deepening in herself. He will get on nuts. The laughter of the young man cut the silence. He indifferently looked around. Everyone was huddled under a tree. The old creaking tire rolled at his feet, and the classrooms whispered around, throwing distrustful glances at the guy. A few days after resettlement, life floats here with the same pulse, and the daily routine was no worse than in a familiar world. In the morning, he smelled an ink and old books. Legends, letters, and scores were studied under the sigh of a sigh, and after lunch, weapons were squeezed in the hall, feeling how power and magic were overtaken by even the best masters of the yard. The sun was barely touching the tops of the trees. The characters stood under a branched oak near the training field, followed the movements of others, and here Karen quietly advised the boy to breathe deeper, as a sign of support. At that moment, the girl fell near the feet of the boy. Someone sharply rejected her from the workout, and the dust broke into the air. True attention to the girl ran in her gaze. He caught this warm glare and met her eyes. She, involuntarily smiling, turned her gaze on him. The next moment, I jumped and, tearing my voice, rushed, and our hero only casts silent views around, catching every disturbance of anxiety in the air. Karen felt a bit of anxiety in the air. Now everyone was swaying like a damned, and the guy became a stranger to the world. The lone hero did not guess. The domestication not only touches the animals, but also people. If he knew, maybe never dare to do so. A close look at Karen, and yet it is strange. Why is she near? The girl confessed her eyes. Her friends, except for him, did not have. Looking into her eyes, the young man wondered why she was not frightened. Though he could conquer her, he had passed into his thoughts. The careful look slid with a circle, stopped on a mini. It seemed that nothing changed her movement or shadows in her eyes. Mina felt his gaze and froze, catching a subtle smell of curiosity in the air, trying to guess what captured his attention. Since then, wherever the hero would go, the mind stepped nearby, the shadow slid after, without releasing a moment, not to speak a word, but to always be nearby. Now she did not run away from him as once. In memory, those moments from the class broke out when their feet themselves carried it away from a familiar look. When the most beautiful girl looked at him with curiosity, the boys were darkened in his eyes, and the hero felt their prickly glances like a springs that were about to break. In memory, a conversation with the princess broke out. There is no word that it is impossible to remove the domestication. The way out should be, as you would like to know. But for the second time he sighed for the second time, a verse like a wind. The vigilant look of Mina was sliding in the movements. That's the same moment, and the heart jumped. The chance appeared, finally. The cheeks flare up with shame, even now as the letter is mentioned. She was ashamed, shaking in front of her, hiding the truth, and his eyes always avoided. Now she wrote everything on the domestication, and barely holding back her breath, stretched at least the tips of her fingers to touch the hero. Just at least a moment to feel him nearby. At that moment, the piercing Karenev, I forgot to mix brandy. Our hero decided that she remembered the past world, and Mina immediately removed her hand, feeling, time is not suitable for touch. Every morning it was necessary to move the brand, otherwise everything would be shaken. This hassle was dim, and the hero could not understand why he was still worried. Mina watched, thinking, who became Karen now? Sweet memories of the past did not let Karen. She was shadowed next to Haruto, and Mina was quietly burning from jealousy, squeezing cams somewhere in the darkness. In general, the girl made a pleasant impression, decided mine, and felt a barely noticeable cold, still remained alert. Big glasses did not hide the beautiful features of her face and soft bends of her breasts. Amina noticed at once, like a barely noticeable breath of spring. The next moment, after shuddering from her own thoughts, she realized. To compare herself with her in vain, because the magic united her with Haruto, and the chance to come closer cannot be lost. At that moment, she was scared the name Haruto. Her voice sounded anxiously and trembled in the air, like a thin glass. In an instant, when something was flying just in the face, the young man sharply bounced sideways, and an unknown object with a whistle stood against something solid. That was then that Yoki ran out. She asked for a break, because his hand flew himself. Nearby went Namba and the elder, who followed murmuring, first on the right, again to the right, up, down, left, right, up, and circles. Yoge listened to these words, and the content slipped like a night whisper. The frantic pain burned in the chest of Nina, so arrows broke out in their hands. Fiery tongues were rushing into the air, flying simply in the skeleton, leaving the smoke and the smell of burnt bark. The heart was crazy. Something broke sharply and flew straight at him. He tried to evade, notwithstanding the tension. In the air, it was dangerous. Suddenly, a cry broke up in the air. The boys froze, deciding that someone was injured, and it turned out anxiety was useless. All was well. Seeing the mine rushed at him, he twisted. It struck him to the pain, and the girl only waved her hand and negligently grunted about the annealed brush. Sparks flashed between them, and the boys clearly showed each other their dislike. Their eyes shone, the movements became sharp, the air suddenly thickened with tension. Karen verse whispers on Haruto's ear, but he nods. He is nearby, but it is not his business. He scroys the verse in his thoughts. Everything probably through him. But not a word broke out of his mouth, only sighing somewhere deep inside. The prince watched the characters fighting instead of being friends. It seemed strange to him. And two girls laughed nearby, blinded by a thirst for him. They circled around like butterflies. The prince did not appear himself. Chichiba and Fujiki stood side by side, and from the crowd, someone shouted through laughter and confusion. They say, his first love had already conquered the prince's heart. The smell of anxiety brought Yohei. He already guessed without the words. The prince again fascinated their girls. The prince, as if not understanding the sum of Yoheios, said that he just got acquainted with everyone. There was nothing surprising, and the girls, covered with a blush, lowered their eyes and silently huddled closer to him. In the air it smelled tensions. The views of the boys became sharp, like an edge, and the prince realized something was tormented, because no words were said, and his eyes were told by themselves. The hero watched as a tension broke out in the garden. Yesterday the boys conceived an attack on the prince, but he dealt with all, so now they remained versed to suppress him. The prince was warmly watched as the boys were changing and firmly, and watching them cleverly avoiding the arrow into the attack of the attack is a real sight that intercepts the breath. But the most interested in the prince is the other. The look is looking for our heroes, silently sliding between them. Catches the trembling of air and anxiety in the heart. The prince studied the mine carefully. The girl's movements arose a new shine, as if to curb the force inside, and it was probably a merit of domestication. The view of the prince permeated our hero, forcing him to take the sake, but still the prince explained. The domestication reinforces both the servant and the gentleman. The strength of the habit of Rai strengthens them both, and the mine, the whole trinity at the same time. Karen involuntarily voices the opinion. Does the hero's power grow every time he tames someone? The young man looks at her, seems to agree, and Mina carefully monitors, without missing any movement. At that moment, Karen, all in the sparks of joy, confessed that she also dreams of this domestication, and the hero, knocked down from the panther by her glow, did not realize anything, and only Mina, clamping her breath, horrified. How to deny? Suddenly the prince approached so close that his perfume felt, and, looking right at the Mina, explained that they were still not familiar, and invited everyone to his room in the evening. At that moment, something trembling ran in their views. The eyes of both blurred, shimmering with a strange light, as if in the air, an invisible glow was swollen. Suddenly, the girl calmly said that she would not do it. She was repelled by his house, he himself, and even the air in the room smelled of alien, which she did not need. From the mine, such sincere seriousness was poured out that the prince was lost. His magic was in vain in the air, as if he were unattainable for them. Fun when he was rejoicing? The boys rejoiced. The girl did not succumb to his seductive words, and did not go to the princess, as all others did. The views of the princes slid contemptuously and silently. They were pressed, and the guy only glanced in response, not realizing that he was lies in this cold. The prince, waving his hands, gave a sign to everyone. We'll wait if the girl changed his mind and left, leaving behind the silence and the slight aroma of roses. Looking closely at the mine, the hero thought that it was not necessary to be rude. The girl slowly turned, gladly realizing he wants her to go beside him. The hero began to justify himself, but Mina had discouraged, playing the image, as if the thin ice split between them. The punishment, which was standing, laughed, and the hero felt immediately something was wrong with his mouth. After the adventure in the classroom, they talked about the dungeons, and the princess, swallowing the alarm with all, suggested changing the workout. Time came, the hearts were squeezed and someone was barely noticeable. Demons are waiting under the ground. They call to battle. Every movement echoes the hole knocking. Dust rises, and the reward is hidden in the dark. Only the most bold feels its shine. Karen was to hear about a real dungeon as her eyes flashed with happiness. The hero smiled and said that the world was beautiful, and the mind whispered he would say, "It would be easy for him." Friends froze in anticipation of the words of the princess. Suddenly it became clear. Mina was not the way the hero thought. She is stronger than him 100 times, and he is no longer offended, but smiles, looks straight as if he touches his gaze. Yohei, shaking his feet so that he did not touch the hero's head, he searched in his thoughts. What it could be called dungeon. The princess smiled gently and promised. Today in the lesson, all this will be revealed. The echo of her words was quietly slid with air. Cretaceous was rushing on the board. A dark dungeon grew under her hand. The full mystery of the ruin of the past, where the treasures of magic, traps, and monsters are hiding, which seems to be waiting for the breath of your fear. The further immerse themselves in the dungeon, the thicker the air pulsates from magic, the more terrible creatures are chatting in the dark. The girl drew fire and monsters on the board, as if they were about to come to life. The strength of the dungeon was measured by a magical power. On the board, it quickly brought 10 levels, and somewhere in the air, there was an alarming smell. More than the 7th, yet no one overcame. On the way, there were 7 levels of complexity in the dungeon. Everyone's eyes were silently in the princess, at once on the 7th. On the faces, anxiety, in the air, a thick, alarming whisper. The girl quickly calmed down in a soft voice. There is nothing to worry about, and her mouth was barely smiling. She added that they would only go to the 3rd floor of the dungeon, the one that has long been traveled and applied to the map, so she almost did not chat there. The responsibility for all, of course, lies on Yohei. And why went there then? I was looking for this meaning. Caught the thread of plan. The princess's questions recognized the attention. The answer was obvious. It may sound strange for them, but it is only necessary to relax, and death would sneak instantly. In those seconds, her face became ruthless. The princess met them with a serious look and said solemnly. Silence hung. Everyone was catching her words. Even the hero shuddered. Is it true that in the darkness of this prison you can meet death? The princess noticed that this dungeon is full of traps. In the dark are crossbows, bottomless failures, and closed rooms, so the main thing is not to touch the stranger and closely watch under your feet. Her words sounded in a sharp, cold wave ran through the class. Those who still did not know such kept their breath, their eyes flashed anxiety. The rustle of palms in silence, a smile played on her face. Hope flashed that the first descent to the dungeon would be a real miracle. The view of the hero slid in the face of the princess, and she added, If mentioned, you can find magical artifacts and treasures. The hero was surprised to artifacts, and you only imagined treasures. The girl quickly summed up. Tomorrow they go. It will take a whole day, so we need to be alert. She will receive the map later, and the dungeon is called the Tomb of Kings. The next day, at the entrance to the terrible one as night, the tomb was frozen for a moment. Its cold stone was whispering, and everyone ran through the skin. In the air, the princess's voice thundered. Everyone must share and stand in 3, as if clearly measured groups to move forward quickly and harmonious. Karen and mine were already standing. The team is collected. The views are tense. The heart is pounding in anticipation of the unknown. Surprisingly, he slid his gaze, but Karen said, almost no one would lighten him, so he helped her, and Mina, like a light breath, promised to protect her hero. Hearing the promise of protection, the mine was confused, did not understand whether he was against it, but Karen was carefully sweeping. They were already a team, and then they went shoulder to the shoulder. The vicious look of them slid in every movement of the hero, like a shadow in the darkness. In memory, a night conversation broke out in the palace. This Haruto was too inquisitive, and the prince felt that if someone learned about his power over people, scandals would not be avoided. The corridor was filled with tension. The prince looks at the guy and explains, he does not need to be angry. He himself knows that he was annoying. But could he predict what would happen if he knew it? The prince calmly said, they say, let the young man believe, dislike for Haruto in him stronger than himself. These words touched Zacchaeus, awakened his curiosity, and even a slight surprise. The prince turned around. The steps were ringing along the corridor, and he said that they were held here through the guy. The words fell, and Joe realized. Everything was spinning around him. The recognition of the heart briefly. The look is looking for support. To Yoche, because he wants to take care of him. Yoche hears it. Surprise cuts his face, but a smile flashes joy. Hearing that the prince really wants him to become his guard, the young man was surprised, but not ashamed to add, such a matter is trusted only by a strong and intelligent hero. But here is a mine, and because of its presence, it is difficult to mention the recent business. Thoughts are confused like clouds of wind. Now he wanted to touch the guy's shoulder, pass something. And here is quite close. He extends something. And the new moon looks at the unexpected gift in his palms. And the prince promised to borrow his equipment, the best in the whole country. Seeing that he was lying in his palms, Joey looked carefully at the little button, trying to grasp her secret. The prince said, "Everything will be resolved tomorrow, and if someone disappears, it is not a wonder in the dungeon. No one will surprise silence or echo of steps." It was on this day that all the Gargeros moved to the dungeons, and in front, in the rays of torches and a barely audible rustle of steps, the princess stepped behind it. Mine. Young man, Tiger and Karen, holding the first. The princess illuminated the path of trembling fire. The verse ordered the traps and monsters. If someone disappears or injured, let him know immediately. The band whispered, but followed the shadow behind the shadow. She had to apologize to Haruto for a dangerous assignment, but the hero assured the hero in his voice. There was no guilt here. Everything happened not of her will. 2 hours ago, the smell of coffee did not weave up from the room, Yo told the princess. She had to realize, the one who goes first always keeps her heart under a blow. Hearing this, the elder stared at the interlocutor, trying to catch the real meaning in the look of Yoga. Of course, the first to drop down the monsters, and so stronger should go ahead. This is what I said, closely translating from our hero on his tiger. The princess said is true, and it is difficult not to believe in her words, so royal guard moves forward. The silver of the pads is shaking, and the stone floor is trembled under her feet. Yoi nod. It's time to go first. Hearing this, Garuto shuddered. In the air, the question was why he was suddenly chosen for the bait. The gaze slid on his faces. Someone denies. Do someone want to press the chief? He asks everyone, and our hero squeezes his heart. He pressed on a person, mentally sweeping himself. Apologies broke out of his mouth, but for Karen it did not change anything. There is no one with whom to unite. Mina felt she serves him, and here everything was decided for a long time. The hero thanked the tiger for carrying their luggage, and it seemed like a predatory striped animal smiled, swaying with a tail in thick air. Something cold went on the back, and altogether they looked sharply to where the alarming rustling came from. She wore, noticing how the young man was shining, and the boys, looking at, whispered, scared. Only Yo, mockingly, already wanted to throw something, but the older stopped him with a sharp look. Suddenly, the worlds of the eyes were cut from the darkness of the tunnel, predatory, burning, and the boys realized, before them, the monster. Suddenly, the air opened the flock of swamps. The bats broke out of the shadow, and friends, feeling the wings over their head, rushed to the side, barely holding back panic. The mind focused, the arrow behind the arrow glowed with heat and eagerly absorbed into the wings of the bats, which were rushed in the air until none stayed in the order. The next moment, with a crash and a sharp smell of smoke, the bats shook to the floor. Mine has already made its black business. The dissatisfaction with Yohei barely had time to flash like guys who were fascinated by the girl's skillful agility. Suddenly exploded, the wonder and joy together to the chest of the hero. And suddenly everyone in the class really looked like a real brave man. The monsters were overcome, and the descent passed easily as on the wings. But suddenly something unfamiliar appeared in the twilight. The fresh air smelled anxiety, and the heart jumped in the chest. The views of all, frozen, slid to the strange canvas on the wall. Everyone tried to understand that he was hiding in colors and shadows. The princess, sliding her fingers on the wall, quietly explained, "This is the passage down. Then the darkness will thicken, and the monster would become more dangerous." So the boys had to delay and rest. The sigh of the room. A silent look stuck in a cold picture on the wall, but to change nothing. Sleepy fatigue spilled between them, pushing a short break. As the silence sowed the lawn, the boys split into bands. The rustle of packages and the incense of food sailed in the air. Everyone began to taste their dinner. At that moment, Joe thoughtfully talked to the main among the guards, with his fingers nervously drawing circles in the wood, while in the air stood the smell of dust and hum. The harsh voice of the interlocutor. The young man noticed fatigue in every movement, and Karen also felt it. The passion in his eyes faded. His shoulders dropped. Silence spilled around. Karan settled directly on the striped side of the tiger, breathed heavily, and the hero felt fatigue filled her to the edge. The girl quietly confirmed it like a whisper of herbs in evening silence. Haruto cast a warm look at the mine. looking for a response in her eyes. But she laughed slightly, squeezing her fingers, as if the words had remained somewhere at the tip of the tongue. Suddenly, she confidently asked him to lie down on his knees, the praise of the hero and Karen, who jumped out of his chair and looked carefully at the mine. And the hero finally tried to deny, hinting, for Grace there was a fluffy tiger. And the plot was almost felt. Karen apologized, but said it is for her. She leaned against the tiger, and he was satisfied with the frozen, gently pressing her in her paws like a large striped blanket. A little embarrassed, the hero catches the careful look of Karen and understands. He will have to make her decision. The consent sounded quietly, and even the tiger from the carrette froze, stopping the brawl, watching the guy closely, and Mina was surprised to cover his mouth. He still decided to. The confusion of the boy's eyes, but the mine, trembling with determination, carefully stirred on his knees, catching his warm breath and a gentle surprise. Once she touched the floor, sharply pulled out, so rapidly that scared both Karen and a tiger, and the hero froze, open her eyes wide, as if a statue had frozen. She joked. The girl confessed. But now for laughter. Not time. And her voice became a little quieter, like a wave that retreats from the shore. In the end, Gudo agreed. She was right, and the crowd raged around. Karen laughed, because their loneliness seemed absurd. But the hero added, so it is, apparently. Mina's heart responded with an alarming knock. The soil was heard from under his feet. Her plans fell apart like a shaky house in the wind. The dusk was still bubbling, and Karen was entertained whether the hero would be able to tame the monsters. More tamed, more trouble with food, she caught. Immediately thought, it does not please at all. The mines of the world were constantly scraping. Everything fell out of their hands like fragile glasses on the floor. And the question was a bitter taste on the lips. Why so? The hurrying steps flew the moon. The heart of the hero was crazy while he was looking for it, shaking from hope. Only it would be all right with her. Thoughts kept her trap. She looked and assured that everything was fine, but her face fell asleep, as when she was a child when she was squeezed by the walls of fear. Divination. The young man still remembers, and it gives her strength. The cheek is wrapped in a blush, but a sweet memory of their childhood is warming the heart, because it is really important to the hero. Karen, trying to discharge the air, quietly said that she had something, and plunging her hand into the bag on the back of the tiger, got an unknown tincture. A tart aroma of herbs came out of the bottle. This drink should restore the mind and add the power of the body, but casting a look at the Karen and the strange content of the jar, the characters were just silently overcome with their eyes. The doubts were rustling in the air, and the girl could not understand what they sat down. Last time, Karen's potion brought the hero a bunch of painful adventures. The whole body was boiling. The girls rushed to rescue. Since then, the Karen's potion has been treated with distrust and tension. The princess came closer, looking carefully at his face, and whispered gently, "Do not worry. This time Karen was right." The hero heard, and surprise broke out in his gaze. Suddenly, the guard called the princess. She shuddered, turned away from the heroes, and, unnoticed, whispering, they died into their own conversation, as if the world had disappeared. At that moment, Karen realized, the girl is skilled, and our hero felt how something important and useful swells in her movements, like a gift. This special talent. Karen stretched out a drink like everything was fine. The three swallowed from her palms, and the hero of the verse watched them, silent, alert, as well as a mine, in whose eyes he was glowing. A moment of hesitation, and all leaned forward, alternately touched the lips of cool water, which smells of sunlight and freshness of summer. Suddenly, a new force was played inside. The shoulders straightened. Haruto's eyes and Mina's were joy, as if the wind had picked them up. Karen, catching this moment, wanted to find out the idea of her potion. The hero smiled, they say. The strength had already restored, and Nina nodded lightly and assured she was well. The smile blossomed on the face of Karen. Somewhere in the breast, he sang peace. The news was warm in the cold air. At the moment when the air rang from tension, Yohei watched the boys with the guard. The gaze touched him, hoping. Suddenly he had a prince's artifact. The bullet flashed in the young man's hand when he showed her to the guard. He fed immediately, realizing the truth, and began to prepare magic. The next moment the ball flashed a gentle glow. Yoga froze, surprised to look into this miracle that suddenly came to life in his hands. In a moment, everything flooded with light. The guys stared at me for a second, as if they did not understand anything. The eyes of the chief of security broke out when he noticed a light ball in his hands. He explained, Then, apparently, a trap teleport. The guy just ran his shoulders, bewildered. When the boys heard about the teleport, they came closer. Anxiety broke out in his eyes because the princess told something about the following traps. You touch, and you are gone. And the characters, having a breath, listened carefully and did not look. He showed a trap. A quiet voice advised Yokius to calm down and throw it faster until the explosion stirred. Of course, Yoki turned confidently, smiled. In his thoughts flashed, who, if not a hero, will be able to catch this trap? And suddenly the ball was in his palms. His heart pounded, his breath went away, and the surprise was ringing in the air. Next to him, the girls froze, but only evil was split, as if a sharp tooth by gaping the air. The next moment the knives jumped out of the ball. Something sharp pierced his hand, and hot pain forced Haruto shouting. The girls rushed to him, and the blade was ripping in the wound, not letting them escape. Calling everyone, retreat faster until the alarming hat has subsided, and the air is still trembling with haste. But it was at this moment that the girls rushed to him. Too late, as Karen understood the shadow of anxiety. Mina felt he would follow him at least to the abyss, even if he falls with him. And in a moment the hero realized that he could not change anything. Suddenly, alien hands grew out of the ball, rushed to the heroes. They froze in horror, as they were caught by a crazy vortex and everything around it, erasing the voices and the whistle of air. Where the boys were recently stood, the whirlwind swirled dust and grass rapidly, rose up, and suddenly gathered in a shimmering ball over his heads. Silence thundered when he fell. Everyone frozen, his eyes stuck in the ball that lay alone in the middle of the cave. At that moment, it came to the princess. Everything went to a scraper, and Haruto, Karen, and Mina were trapped. Just as Karen made a conversation, the hero picked it up with a fire, and from time to time he glanced at a mine, which, squeezed, stood at the board. Her gaze, catching his eyes, also stopped on our hero. In silence and gentle trembling air, her gaze met with him, and she turned away sharply. While the hero tried to understand what was going on, someone's hurrying halter was heard through the noise. The name sounded through a dream. Gerudo opened his eyes. The Karen tiger pressed next to the warm side, and the mine stretched from above, breathed calmly, just moving his shoulder. The gaze slid upwards, looking for at least some prompt about the place where they were, but Karen only fell his shoulders. There was no way out. The air was noticeably thickening. The cold stone under his feet, the dim light. The hero suddenly felt, the trap has swollen. Even the dungeon of the verse breathes, and near the mine, fixed, pale, like a star that has lost light. The ease of Karen enveloped, a moment, and she would believe in another dimension, and the tiger, meanwhile, smoothly licking the hero, barely heard. The gaze slid to Karen, and suddenly it became clear. Something changed. The girl stood confused, and her glasses disappeared, as if they were melted in the air. She explained. It is. She does not see anything strange. And he realized, glasses became just part of the image, if the girl is so easy to lose their loss. Karen scattered. It was noticeable. The hero caught his gaze and wondered. Why hiding his delicate face behind dark glasses? Just at this moment, the sleepy voice of the Mini came. Apparently, as soon as it woke up, Karen rushed to her rapidly, and the girl, already smiling, greeted our hero with a good morning. It was unusually surprised in the room. Everyone turned to the mine, as if for the first time they heard her voice. Waking up, she rushed to the side, chasing a wild fear with the wind and shouting that broke silence. The cheeks did not allow her to look at the hero, and he was glad that she was whole, apparently, and the tincture really helped, otherwise he could not be. Karen stared at the darkness, looking for traces, and the hero whispered that it may be the lower level of the tomb, and hoped to find the way out soon. But later he confessed that they were unlikely to help. Hearing these words, the mind stopped her gaze in confusion. The meaning lost somewhere in the air, and Karen only humbled and surprised at the hero, holding his breath. Short silence, and then the young man remembered with confidence. The smile you was so clear, as if it were glowing in half, thickened air. In the air, a mockery smile of the guard of guards, like a shadow sliding between a city Gamor, hanged in the air. The words of the hero made a mine and Karen shudder. The breaths were frozen, the eyes were frozen, as if the air suddenly became thicker. The smell of anxiety hung in the air. Mina was barely restraining not to ask. He was convinced of what he saw. The young man was scrolling into the thought of conspiracy, but the whole stage seemed to exhibit, too loud. Karen did not understand why they started all this, that they were doing these gloomy guards here. And the hero sighed. All this is the trick of the prince. although the heart stubbornly refused to believe it. As soon as she heard about the prince, the cold walked his back. Everything came into place. The guilt gravitated in her chest like a shadow. It is her mistake. The frightened look slid on the hero. Suddenly she realized. Everything happened because she told him no with her heart. Seeing the face of the Mini cleared the painful grimace, the hero rushed to her and rushed to persuade. Everything seems like it seems. It is barely audible, the smell of anxiety in the air, the young man explained. It is not your fault. Then his wild hatch makes people see him in him. He wanted to add something, but suddenly noticed. Haruto bleeds his hand, bandaging her, both whispering about what else to have time. Even if they manage to get out of here, returning to the castle under the rule of the prince, as Karen decided, remains a big question. The way can be without a gate. Seeing into the darkness of his own thoughts, the hero decided. Everything that was, his guilt. But if he pretends to be dead, the world will sigh more calm, and the return will give silence and relief. Minnie and Karen almost at the same time rejected this idea. It is not an option for them at all, and he was surprised to notice how easily girls find common ground. The road to another kingdom opened. Amazing creatures came to life from under his hands, and he dreamed about a real zoo, where everyone breathes and moves his own life. Mina strongly stated that she will do it. The hero did not go, what was being said, and she was already measuring the thoughts of her own zoo. She had to explain that it was a joke, only a joke. A different opinion moved in the minds. Her presence nearby was clear, because the maid should follow the owner, even if it does not change anything. Karen seemed to have death with them sweeter than returning to the emptiness of loneliness. The girls were amazed at their genuine support. In their eyes the fire of determination to move with it, without hesitation for a moment. Subsequently, they decided to discuss it, under the rustle of leaves and a barely pervasive breath of the evening wind. At first, as Karen noted, you need to get out of here, although all the exits are blocked. It is good that the reserves of water and food were still left, looking around the hero. At that moment, the look of Rai stuck somewhere behind his back, and then in silence a strange rustle was cut behind. The wall shuddered, and through a dull surface seemed to look for a way out. Deft strokes, a crack, a slight smell of dust in the air. The thunder flew the room, and the wall exploded. The hero's eyes were wide open from surprise, as if she were stuck in his chest. The monster laid herself near the tiger. The wool rolled up, and he rushed in an instant, protecting the owner. In the air it smelled of burning, and the hero realized something wool was hidden here probably. The demon attacked somewhere nearby. The demon roared and stirred in the hero with a burning look, hard on the ground. When the young man first saw the monster, the grandeur was striking, and Mina was already breathing the heat for magic. But he stopped her with his hand, wanting to win himself. In the air, it smelled of fear, and the hero, without delaying, rushed to the monster's pash, feeling that every step trembles from determination and a frantic thirst for an unknown. At the same moment, when he becomes closer to the limit, he launches the taming. His voice trembles in the air, and the demon shudders as if to feel the touch of invisible power. The views faced as if in the air there was a stress. The bright flash cut the darkness, as if the sun was instantly flashing. Now he and the demon, fixed, eyes in the eyes, silence buzzes between them. The air is bitten by voltage. In a moment, the demon had already walked, gleaming a smile over the hero, and around, there was a strange, deceptive silence, as if everything had gone into place. Mina, getting closer, breathed the alarming air, and the capture trembled in her heart. He was able to overcome the monster, and it seemed incredible. The hero said that thanks to his mind, he managed to avoid battle. This soft but stubborn energy suggested that it was better to find a way without blood. Looking at the heroes and the tiger, Karen felt the wave of the force. The heart scored faster, and the air was filled with a bitter aroma of hot grass. The young man emphasized that this monster is strong, especially when you take into account the mine with paradise. Together they only reinforce each other, as the princess resembled, because the more powerful the abilities of servants, the more power gets their ruler, and vice versa. Karen said again that she was being tamed, and the mine was already tired of listening to it, and the hero asked, let her silent, because he is also embarrassing from these words. Mina tried to change the topic. She said, they need to understand his name. The hero thought, and Karen, rubbing laughter through the memories, confessed. A fluffy baby reminds him of a golden retriever from childhood. In his head broke out, here it is, his summer. Karen smiled. Again a weird name, and the dog suddenly rolled up and, twisting his tail, began to lick the boy. Going to the wall with a hole, the hero asked the summer to expand the passage so that they could climb. The smell of dust in the air, and the fingers were eagerly touched the rough stone. The sadness was frozen in his eyes, and suddenly the hero felt, his hand would not rise, he is not capable of it. The compassion was squeezing his chest. He understood perfectly. The path is thorny. It is not so easy to break through it. The demon proclaimed that the sound untouched the silence, and the hero, catching the strange movement of his paws, shuttled in confusion. He had not yet seen. A powerful roar swept a wave, shuddering air and earth. Mina suddenly felt something in her chest, as if the world was shaking with her. In a moment, the room boiled. Tangles of demons, a familiar smell of sulfur. The hot tongues of the flames mixed with a chaotic movement, as if Lido had dissolved in his flock. Suddenly, the truth revealed. All of them are his friends, and he, considering himself a leader, stood in front, trying to control the flow of laughter and whisper. The mind kept breathing, watching the roar, the bitterness of wool and wild couple, and mentally prayed. Maybe Haruto would cope. The young man looked silently at the flock of Stragvisk and decided to try. The words of the verse slid through the crowd, tamed everyone. Here are other people's eyes quietly follow his movements, as a familiar light in the darkness. A moment, it seemed, everything would work out. But the forces betrayed the hero. Their feet were squeezed, and only a strong Mina held it from falling. I immediately rushed to reassure the girl. Everything is fine, just spent too much magic. And with all the nature felt the power that woven into the mine in the air. The girl agreed. Magic really became more obedient, and right now in her palms woven from the air a tiny iron cage, similar to the shadow of the crown. Hardly catching something elusive in the air, the hero dramatically changed the direction, and Mina, hearing, tried to understand what had happened. And for some reason, it seemed as if his skill had grown. Mina was surprised to expand her eyes, and the young man explained a smile. Now his nose can finally breathe the fullness of the aromas of the world. Through the walls, everything is visible, touched the rough clay, and felt the power of the monster crossed him. The dungeon became much easier, and in the meantime, Mina sharply closed the king nearby, and he just looked confusedly. The girl screamed sharply, let him not even look in her direction. She swayed with sharp words, from which the air became bitter and barbed. Mina explained that if the young man is really capable of such, he will not forgive him, because he would not have the right to rush in their clothes, and he had to understand himself. The hero assured, everything is different. The force can be switched off, and he will never hurt them, neither now nor in the future. Mina became discouraging. In her eyes she glowed distrust, and Karen gently touched her shoulder and quietly assured, everything will be smoothed, everything will be fine. Her appeal came with such politeness that the girl immediately apologized, though she did not pay attention, and the hero, clamping between these words, caught himself in thought. Is he not superfluous now in this room? Karen noted that it seems that the forces do not grow more. New skills are growing, as if unexpected opportunities are born under the skin. It seems as if there are neither experience nor levels, and only they can become stronger. The hero catches himself in this thought, and Karen quietly adds that children of such an alliance will grow up real warriors. The name of the children was whispering, and Mina's cheeks broke out immediately, and the surprise freshened her gaze. Karen immediately hurried to assure that she was not referring, and Mina was relieved. You could calm down a little. Meanwhile, the hero calmly turned the attention of the girls. These walls are thin. They are easy to break through and get on, calling everyone after him. The monsters are already assembled, and confidence is pulled in the air. They will be able to. Mina feels, it's time to move, and the hero squeezes his fists, though no one still knows where the road is leading. Mina impressed. The exit from this dark mouth is not able, and to descend into the deepest abyss for the victory will not risk. Karen stared at the map, imagining whether the path was up from the lower floors, and the hero remembered. There are 7 levels of difficulties. The dungeon was almost not studied. The question is truly urgent, smelling of unknown and adventure. If monsters like Lido are roaming in the world, they become stronger. Mina was looking at him and trembled by the thought that this dungeon did not overcome them, and she waited for the hero's response. There was nowhere to hurry, but if you look for a way out, we need to act, and our hero confidently decided, time to go down. What surprise flashed in the look of Karing when Haruto himself suggested storming the dungeon. The map was rustled in the fingers, and the words were quietly pouring. There is no trust in the royal family. There were treasures and hope. It sounds dangerous, but Argira looked at Karen. Minds and the demons gathered near the demons wanted to ask, are they really ready to move near him in new, dark depths of adventures? The careful look slid his faces, and the girls immediately, without hesitation, exhaled the answer. Mina with a smile quit that it was a stupid question. Where Haruto did not go, she would go behind him, like a shadow in the soft light of the evening. Karen has already gone from the medication how many times had to be repeated. She would stay with them until the end, until the last breath, despite the fatigue and doubts about the eyes. These words were echoed in the chest, and our hero felt the patience broke up, then tolerated. Having collected all his heart in his fist, he jumped on the demons. Together they will be able to go through the dungeon, and together, breathing with dust, rush to dig a wall in front. At midnight in the palace, behind a glass of tea in cozy rooms, the prince thanked Yohoi for his work, and Otto, the verse lean, confessed to me. The prince, and no idea that he now passes. In the eyes of other boys, Joki became like a killer. Sharp eyes slid after, whispering behind his back, as if conspiracies were matured right here under the twinkle air. Alongside the headman, he twisted his glasses with his fingers and told that, as he understood, everything that had happened was created intentionally, as if someone's hand led the events in a row. That is why the prince was forced to tell everything, and he just watched as the prince struck tea without understanding anything. The prince said that it affects the mood of classmates, joking about old age, and they are friends with Yoheios, those who give everyone a sense of freedom. It was worth hearing about freedom, how curiosity broke out. What exactly did the prince mean? Joy, meanwhile, straightened, stood up and pushed his chin. It was then that the prince was quietly recognized. All this because he was locked in the palace, and if someone understands, it is not easy. At that moment, the thoughts returned to our hero, and the elder caught. Everything was spinning around Suitsui, and the prince saw that he was subtly guessing him. He felt that the truth had long been revealed, but now he finally sighed with relief. The problem disappeared as if the sun in the sun. The elder did not retreat. His eyes were looking for every detail. He wanted to know more, even the Mina and Karen who were with them. He looked closely at the prince, holding his breath in waiting for the answer. When the cup touched the table, a dry explanation came. All this was only a side damage, and there was no crumb of compassion for human destinies in the prince's voice. The elder caught every word carefully, and the prince, feeling the vigilant look, explained. Mina was too attached to Tsutsui because of the domestication, and Karen, a non-toning, does not benefit. The head of the verse said, Sister missed the disappearance, recalls how the princess was embarrassed, searched for rescue, looking for how to return the heroes to his home. The prince added, Felicia is the most kindness, and this is pure truth. But there was one little secret. The blade slid on the cake, the crumbs fell on the table. The prince, smiling ominously, said that the life of the hero was worth nothing. There was no indispensable, and the elder immediately realized everything. The horror squeezed the breast when it became clear that only the one who proves his value. Otherwise the end. Handling his hands, the guy dared to ask, though he guessed the answer. The smoke was lightly over the cup, and the prince, noticing the anxiety of old age, calmly dumped a sip of tea and assured, there was no threat. Those people disappeared forever. The television trap predatory evaluates the victim's strength and ruthlessly pushes it to the hopeless floor, from where to get out, as if through the wall to climb. Most likely they were thrown at the 20th stage, and there were only 25 stairs in the burial ground, so remembered the prince, and at the same time carefully guessed the power that our hero with friends possessed. For example, the tiger had the power of the 7th level, and with each descent, the monsters grew by 30. The monster from the depths become 30 times stronger than the royal. The news that these monsters are 30 times stronger, as if thunder stunned the old man. His heart pounded, and his hands trembled like leaves under the wind. The prince's heart was squeezed, and enemies there without cure, and every step is on the verge of survival, so he should not mention that place, he explained in a quiet, hoarse voice. The elder mentioned, Haruto has the ability to curb, so you can conquer all the monsters and easily win. But there was a loud, sincere laughing of the prince, and the elder was confused and froze. The prince, swallowing the alarm, explained, It is impossible to compete with someone who is too strong. It is simply impossible to tame such an opponent. The last words of the prince were still heard in the air, and the elder was quietly realized. Everything, however, spoken. the work of them. No one, neither the prince, nor the elder, nor the inhabitants, did not know how many tests awaited the heroes in the suffocating darkness and how many wild animals were conquered. Karen looked slowly, behind, noisy and breathe. Many incredible demons and creatures curled up with Korthos's skill. The crowd is striking and frightening her eyes. The third step under his feet was owned, and our hero is sniffed, silent. Mina felt something was sharpening the soul of the boy. She wanted to understand what had happened. Even the tiger, staring tightly, waited for the answer. And here the hero notices the monster who was quietly following them from under the shadows. In fact, much stronger, if you think and feel this cold breath of fear at the nape. After Curb, everyone became stronger than him, a wonder that squeezes the soul. The touch of a tiger's rough wool, a look thrown on a mine, and anxiety is rustled in the chest. The girl felt, he thinks that the reinforcement was uneven, and the guy noticed it, nodded. And behind, carrying in silence the taste of expectations, Karen silently caught every word. Having thought for a moment, she joined. In her eyes blinked gentleness, and the girl realized everything turns around tenderness. The guy did not stop, and then Karen noticed he called summer in paradise. The air froze without any thread between the monsters, and the young man suddenly felt anxious to the unknown. The girl looked carefully at him. The gaze slid to the mine. The cheeks were sore, the heart trembled, because she knew the word would be her. Karen's carefully added that this may be why the mind was aggravated, but it was only confused for mine. Mina asked Karen to pronounce all this without believing any word, and Karen noticed her abuse and gently advised not to baptize from the truth. Following the growth of Garito's forces, as Mina noticed, the girls already argued. Karen assured that the tamper was different. The heroes stopped the dispute, they say. Power will still be useful, let him boil in veins. Deep underground, among the raw walls, Karen stopped in front of the giant door. Everyone kept their breath, looking at the dark portal, which was laid. Karen suggested, "This is a really den." The mine remembered the mark on the map. There would be a danger. Here, the owner of the dungeon. All together they breathed hard, as if the air became thick. The battles do not miss. It was already felt near the heavy, dark gates. Everyone stopped. The hearts were pounding. In the air, tightened breath. The power of the boy was struck by a mine, and she gently suggested to leave the weak monsters alone. The hero felt, she is right. Extra blood here would only interfere. Just then the weak monsters huddled around, and the girl screamed through tears. Not understanding why she was forced to stay, she wanted to rush into battle with our heroes. It was then that the hero asked to wait here. Karen was silent and drilled with her eyes, as if sharp knives passed on his shoulders. After escaping from the raging of the crowd, she quickly explained, he disagrees with him at all. She wants to help the young man. Her inspiration, like mines and all around, stunned the hero, did not pick up words. The glass jar with a tincture was in his hands. The girl explained, it is a potion from the real rare herbs collected in their journey. It adds strength, strengthens the mind, sweeps fatigue, and therefore insisted, should drink. The force is born not only in the battle. The girl extends the young man with a potion. Her look is solid. He is amazed, but obediently accepts the gift, because in the words of Karen, there was something real. Jumping on the tiger and Nina, for a tame demon, together they thanked the Karen for power, swallowed the elixirs and raced forward until the wind left the girl far behind. A tart, bitter taste of the potion burns the throat when it swallow. You jump down into the dark dungeon, and this horrible taste does not leave either mine or hero, leaves a ticking trace in his mouth. The potion refreshed blood. The body was filled with force. The guy nodded to the girl, knowing, this is a real advantage that cannot be ignored. The paws of the monsters fell to where the boss had to be. But the volcanoes were rising in front, and the desert itself changed the face. The landscape turned, and Haruto silently wondered that it was a miracle in front of them. The shadow slowly slid on their faces. Where she came from, no one understood. Only the alarm to the skin touched the skin. The glances climbed up, and suddenly something that the guy almost swayed, and the mind was left without words. The flash of surprise on the faces, hearts trembled crazy. The unknown giant shadow fell in front of them. The breath froze. Their hearts were worried. They hurriedly sought shelter, hiding from the strength that the earth was barely withstanding. The rustle of air, and from the darkness, the head emerges in front of them, and then the giant dragon crawls with the whole body, heavy stretching of the nostrils and shadowing light. The heroes with knocking and roar rushed directly into the gate, breathing in dust and punching their hearts. Karen watched as they were removed, and at once their silhouettes melted their backs, as if a foggy silence swallowed. The disappearance of the heroes made the girl be surprised to exclaim, and all the monsters froze behind, raising her eyes and looking confusedly after them. Apparently, in the most tender prayer, Karen turned to Mina, Toledo, Paradise, and Haruto, casting a full look on the door, and did not know what was happening with the heroes now. The sand was cracking under his feet, and Haruto had already reached out, feeling the dragon's rough breath, and quietly triggered the taming force directly into the heart of this giant desert. The dragon erupted insanely, pushing the magic signs of the hero, and Mina, frozen from anxiety, saw. The guy did not cope. Suddenly, the wild breath broke them and threw them away. The earth struck sharply, the air whistled, and lying down the hero suddenly saw the giant claws of the dragon, which froze in the air, ready to tear it. It was in the moment of the dragon attack that the tame tiger rushed to rescue the hero, and the summer managed to tear out a mine. The beasts broke out of the place of lightning. Everything turned, and the characters barely realized what happened. In the next moment, they were already pressed against the stones hidden from the hot breath of the dragon, which was silent and rushed with the frantic fury. Because of the stone where they hid, there was a hum in the air. The dragon's power was felt in every breath. Mina and the young man at the same time realized that this creature is not so powerful. An evil roar escaped from the heavy breath of the dragon. The prey disappeared, and the smell of smoke filled the night. The first question of Mina was gently, and the young man realized, the main thing is not to stop, then to curb the stubborn time, to pull a minute after a minute, so that everything would not end too fast. It is impossible to approach this dragon. The air cracks from tension, the bone is cold. But one thought flashes in the head. There is a chance. One must decide and be sure to tell him something. The quiet, persistent voice of the hero came to Mina, to believe him and to do him asks. It was in vain to argue now. It was only necessary to nod in agreement, even if everything was resisted inside. The plan broke up. When he heard the wishes of the hero, everyone rushed to the case. The dragon fricked in the charged smoke of space, sniffed air, searched. But through the clubs of gray, he saw nothing. Suddenly, the stone crashed straight into the face. The dragon wasted, glanced to where, in his opinion, purposefully threw this image. And here from the bushes, the head jumped out of the mines. Everything in dust and sun splashes, rushed to the dragon, rushing stones, desperately trying to divert his attention. The plan is made because the mind of the hero was confused, and the guy chatted for the right moment. The mine circled near the dragon, distracted him, and the sounds of her movements seemed a signal. The chance for the impact grew with each of her jump. Mina felt the bitter smell of smoke. The dragon gathered a flame in his mouth and rushed with fire directly into the mine. The hot wave poured into it. The hum was standing in the air. For the first time, Mina felt, Haruto really needs it. It excites and tickles a heart with a trembling warmth. Once small, she searched for his resistance, but over the years, this need faded, and between them the cold space had spread. They almost did not speak at school. Only joint references nourished silence. The gray longing lay on her shoulders. The only word, that he threw into the void, hung in the air between them, and the powerlessness was squeezing breasts like a heavy darkness. The girl sought to give everything she had, and wove in her skill, attack by fire scales, the flames of the dragon. In her movement, there was an infinite force. The flame dragon flew around, the girl managed it skillfully, and the hero mentally praised mine. Skillful. But as soon as the dragon was distracted, the hero realized, the moment came to try to tame the beast. Passing the dragon, on the other hand, the hero moved straight to him, straining each muscle. And just before the muzzle the monster, like a flash, there were magical plates. The hero rushed directly to the enemy, not looking at. His eyes were determined. There was no crumb of fear in the movement. In a moment, when the dragon looked into his eyes, the darkness wrapped the boy. Loneliness hanging around the abyss, and suddenly a voice cut from the darkness. A domestication is an agreement. If the hero does not overcome him, try to agree. This dragon, the same one with whom the fighting continued, suddenly emerged in his head, offering to negotiate and find a way together. The light fear squeezed the hero's chest when he met the dragon's gaze, stubborn, unwavering. Somewhere inside, something called to act, and with the first step, the feeling came. Everything in their place, mind and desire, was breathing in unison. The view of the hero stuck into the dragon. Curiosity and waiting swollen in the air. But the dragon tickled the thought. What mystery did the guy hide in these words? Even before the dawn in the heart of Haruto, a thirst had already burned, to become a messenger of his will and move forward, as if someone was waiting for the important news in front. From the words of the hero, the dragon stopped a hot breath, waved his wing, and said through the smoke that he agrees. Let him be true, just no longer burned the world. A moment, and the darkness retreated, around again a familiar place. A barely noticeable dust in the air, the roar of the dragon subsides, and the heroine stands, not believing that everything happened. But at that moment, her fiery dragon cut the air sharply, and suddenly completely dissolved, leaving only the aroma of ash and a wave of lonely surprise. Looking around, there is a smell of smoke and ashes in the air, and the girl does not realize why this dragon simply disappeared, leaving only a warm breath in the void. Haruto calls mine, assures, the battle is already averse. In the house, only the silence and the smell of tired air. Seeing Haruto, she quietly went down, solving what the hero was saying. And in memory there was a fresh flame of the dragon, and the bitter taste of fear. Because it seemed almost impossible to win. The doors were screamed and began to dissolve slowly, and it was at this moment when the battle of the heroes subsided. Before them the passage of the defeated boss was solemnly opened. Suddenly bright light broke out. Someone threw a voice. It was time to run out of here, and the mind did not look away from the gate, flooded with a shimmering glow. When the heroes crossed the threshold, the hall met them with greatness. Marble columns stretched up, thickened the carvings. The breath was intercepted. They seemed that they got out of the very bottom of the tomb legends. Karen suggested looking for treasures here where they were to be. And suddenly a girl's smile flashed in the light. She noticed something brilliantly under a layer of dust. The scare was swept by Karen. The girl clung to Haruto, and it surprised not only a young man but also a mine, because she is usually not inherent in fear. Raising her eyes to where Karen pointed out, the hero froze. Something invisible, the alarming, stuck in the air, and the heart suddenly squeezed in the anticipation of surprise. In front of the boys in the huge hall of the tomb, a dragon woman rose, so majestic that at first the spirit was intercepted. Only then they realized, it is not a statue, but a breathing. The real dragon of the Murkots in the twilight, when heroes appeared in the glare of fire in front of him, alive, determined, still breathing in the smoke of the road. Mina thought whether it was what it thought about when Haruto suddenly guessed. Before them, the skin of the dragon who had just won. Friends looked at tension and were waiting for surprises. In front of the heroes, he straightened the wings of the dragon, glittering with the scales, and he introduced a velvet voice. I am Mafilis, a sacred dragon. The name was heard, and Mina immediately explained that it was this dragon, as she heard at the lecture, saved everyone from trouble. Karen, feeling the courage, carefully asked, "How did you find yourself here?" The dragon did not respond immediately. He had a hard time. He slowly built a careful look. "This is all their fault," he added. And from him a heavy wave of pressure was floating. The characters felt her skin and fiercely thought, how is it possible? After reading their silent views, Dragonet said quietly, the ancient wars locked her here, then the heroes managed to win her, and time exhausted his strength, and that was very impressed by travelers. At that moment, she looked at the dragon, trying to understand, and suddenly he was really honest? Because this creature is even able to revive your own shadow. The mystery remained unsolved. Why did this chest at all be closed if the characters are allies? The young man voiced his own doubt. The dragon nodded. All his thought, truth. Over the last millennium, only 3 times the Earth has shuddered from real disasters. Hearing this, only 3 disasters remained on the way. The characters cast a look at each other. Mina has broken her head. Why then call so many heroes? The dragon also thought and confessed that she does not know the true cause of these strange calls. It was often felt as other people's heroes seeking demons and disasters were wandering along the earth, and some fearlessly imprisoned those who have never created evil. Now mine realized. This dragon is another sacrifice of ruthless heroes. In the voice of Karen, sorry, trembling sincere sympathy, and a new thought was barely erupting in her eyes. Hearing the story of the dragon, a retell broke out in memory. The hero returns after the victory over evil, but now he was smoking. Perhaps they were lying in the palace. The reflections of the hero slid into silence. It is difficult to answer. If everything was that way, the forces were to grow. But if you trust this, the enemy becomes not only the prince, but also the whole kingdom. And our hero felt sharply. They will only have the strength to resist them with the most bold. He wanted to curb her Mafilis. The voice sounded clearly and confidently. The words flew to the twilight shadow, and Mafilis looked silently without losing his eyes from the young man. The mind threw a quick, concerned look at Haruto, catching a spark in his eyes. Is he confident? Because the copy won with great effort. The consent was made from Mafilis, but instead he demanded a service. In the voice of the verse played a cold shade of uprising. Finally, the heroine turned. Behind the ancient sign, the cold poured on the skin and did not allow him to breathe. It's time to rip this seal and move out of place. Karen seemed that the hero knew how everything was arranged. Mafilis turned to him confidently, almost no doubt. But he only stepped here for the first time. Everything was new, and confusion was clearly standing in his eyes. Karen with mine only looked at. Both felt, the young man is not yet able to do this. But if the skill is strengthened, Mafilis will be able to break the seal. Then the hero thought, right now, they are able to take the risk and do it. Mafilis nodded and its tone was calm. She asked to start. The words in the air detained the breath of the room. The hero, gathering the last forces, called for a power of taming. In the air smelled in the forest. Wild whispers fell in his ears. The last thing that crashed into memory is a thick darkness that failed consciousness, as if a stone in a well. The distant voice called by name. The hero had to open her eyes. He shook around. Her head was buzzing with pain, as if hundreds of hammers were knocking on her. Mito flicked nearby, and on the other hand, the lavier was stretched. A sharp smell made his way down to his chest, pulled his breath. All our characters sat on the floor around Haruto, fainted. Only Mafilis suddenly felt that her strength was so frantic that his body simply could not stand this burden. That part of that force got into it. This news caught a sudden, and a mine. Hearts for a moment. It was overwhelmed in the air, anxiety in the air. One hand squeezes a wooden beam, the other shakes from a frantic force that has rushed inside, as if a dark stream is torn out. Looking at the dragon, the realization came. The strength to break the seal is not enough, because she breathes the heat of the monster's law. The pity shrinks the hero's breasts. But in the look of Mafili, hope breaks. The chance will still move somewhere near, like a quiet breath of spring morning. The chance appeared, and the young man grabbed him without hesitation. Mafilis explained quietly, "You will become stronger. It will grow, and my strength, so I only ask, strong with me." Surprising the breast of the hero. Is it really under his power? The gaze went out when he turned to the dragon, and he nodded. There is a place where you can gain strength and experience. His name, Eden, she said, looking where the fragments of trees may have been preserved, and a deep darkness has long reigned. About Eden is a suspicious look in her direction, and the Mafilis whispers that it is a dungeon where demons serve as a fuel for the new hero's power. 200 years have been dozing in the seal of the demon, and 9 levels of trials. Hearing this, the boys looked at their hearts. Their hearts lost their hearts, as if something dark was breathing nearby. Seeing this, Meph was surprised. People evaluate the dungeon on a 10-point scale, and how the boys perceived her words, wondered. If they had to fight her, the level would be 8, not 6. Hearing about the level of 6, everything came into place, and Karen almost touched the tired slump, and the dragon died silence. He will have to hurry, because the seal of the demon is about to disappear, and the continent will sink in ruins. Heard the hero. Well, how can it be when thick silence kept in the air and everything was boiled inside? The dragon whispered. Under this seal, hidden artifact that attracts demons. The monster in the dungeon absorbs another's magic, and the forces of demons weaken there. Suddenly, he began to eagerly suck their strength, returning to himself, and at such a speed the printing would soon stop completely. The idea in her head. And if you just steal this artifact? The dragon immediately caught the idea, realized, so the hero will be able to take away the power of the monsters, and he liked this idea. But again the thought of level 9, which she mentioned, returned, and it did not rest. It was then that the dragon warmed with voice. Do not be afraid. In the best of my times there would be a level 10. But the boys only clearer their fists. The dragon became serious, stopped joking, explained that their gear was terrible, and the characters only lowered their eyes when he asked to put up with it. The gates cried out, dissolved, and she was a gesture to shine to a new equipment. The metal did not touch the dust yet, smelled of fresh skin. The bright glow pierced the air. The boys, fascinated, opened their mouths. The breath seemed to be frozen at that moment. Without hesitation, the equipment in their hands, they rushed forward. The steps were deft and elastic. The air trembled from the anticipation. The monsters fell one by one. Yoki cut them with a sword, not noticing what they are weak. Each enemy flew from one stroke, and the breath of the battle mixed with the whistle of steel. At that moment, the elder approached and suggested that Iham alarmed, but Kakero's gaze. Why is it right now, when everything is solved, the young man wants him to stop? The elder nodded at the boys behind, silently explained. All exhausted, barely dragged, did not have time for him. But they cast an indifferent look, grunted that he was indifferent, and again rushed into battle. Johi, along with Kakaru and monsters, rushed forward, and those who were past the tail were surprised. Where did they have the strength? And behind the girl with trembling hands tried to heal the wounded. When the monster fell and the language went to the wild 5th level, the princess said softly, "Let's go deep, but a small group." Yohei caught his every word carefully, and the elder penetrated the ceiling. The village headman looked around. Where did the princess suddenly think of mentioning the 5th level, more complicated than their 3rd? The voice of Yoche Brunov is calm. "You accept everything with age," said, clapping her husband on the back, and the princess, interfering, gently assured, "The kingdom would stand nearby. It is time to tell the world about desperate heroes. The dungeons with their traps and lung echo give them a chance to show themselves." Listening to every word, the elder touched the rock, but at once felt behind his back the breath of the monster, who was slowly approaching. The ceiling with a roar collapsed, dusted, and the young man, inhaling this bitter smell, suddenly realized it was worth it. The monster was already powerless on the floor, the defeated. Finally, the princess realized why the elder so crazy rushed to the ceiling. Before that, he only tried to throw a monster with stones. Yakin approached and quietly patted him on his shoulder. Desto asked to convey it, and the princess noticed. Every day Yaki becomes stronger. The hero of the Kikar also changes. The sense is sharpened. These two are far from ahead of others. Yohi was certain, even if trouble happened, victory for them. And the heroes moving forward immediately saw the city by the sea, so great that the breath was intercepted. Hardly stepping on the city at the foot of Eden, Karen caught the hole in helmets. Crowded, movement. The city lived bright. Here everything was noisy and closely fought life. The street noise gave them a wave of sounds, shouts, laughter, smells of travelers, and Karen felt like everything around her life here was swarmed by adventurers. Everyone dreamed of going to Eden. It was then that the mind remembered the reward, the smell of gold, and the death bell of coins, as in the darkness of the dragon gifted them with wealth. And Karen realized why the hero was so painful to victory. Interestingly, paradise has only one floor, Haruto remarked, and the closer to the heart of the maze, the stronger the monsters that appear. Such a test arena measures the true strength perfectly. In the air, an alarming silence hung when Mina decided. Soon everyone moves directly to the center, to look for artifacts and fasten the seal. Everyone wondered what was happening to Leia. Mina reassured friends. Everything will be good, because they have armor from Mafilis. The glances slid on the armor. In the extinct eyes the confidence struck. Karen nodded silently. The street hum washed the steps, and suddenly the girl's voice emerged through the open window. She recognized the adventurers and looked out of the house, asked if they had already found housing, advising a cozy QT establishment. The girl quickly picked up. Lisa is who she rushed to the hero, and curiosity and easy excitement glowed in her eyes. Her palm clenched his hand, her lips stretched into a sly smile, and she said she was already taking care of them. The mime broke out with a blush, inhaling the courage of this girl. With the same dead grip, the hero stuck the same, and immediately lured with fresh dinners from the tractor. For the young man, it sounded seductively, and Karen at this moment caught his breath. The joy sparkled in her eyes. 3 new guests brought into the room the smell of the road and light excitement. And the hero noticed how quickly and confidently she made decisions. Karen's vigilant look pierced Minan's soul, and caught this fire and thought, why does the girl not take her eyes? Karen added silently, it's time to think about how to get better. Hearing these words, her cheeks flashed again like purple poppies under the first sun. The cry, so that the map fell silent and no fools tore the room, and Karen only smiled Krivo and, staring at the girl's face, did not believe the word. At that moment, Through the noise of the crowd, they noticed how the hero was served on a stranger, and her call, "Faster!" like the wind calling. Karen rushed, and the mine left alone, knew she was revealed. In front of us grew an incredible building, flooded with light. The night around it smelled of wallpaper and freshness, and in the windows there were glare from distant cars. When the door closed behind her back, the girl explained that only one room remained, and the woman was in a hurry, as if she was ashamed of this tightness. Already everything was settled. Lisa easily explained that the boys have long been familiar, and there would be a place. The space was immediately felt free. The eyes of the hero slid on the faces of the girls, most of the mini. He lowered his gaze in a confusion, and at that moment she felt, finally her chance came. She remembered the Kingen words about speed. The girl took everything on herself, and through that she was indifferent. Karen and the hero only surprised looked at, and the mine stood motionless. Mina decided that everything was fine, and the time to go dinner, and Karen silently looked. In the air the anxiety was hanging, the hero guessed. Something was depressing, but did not understand what it was. In a minute everyone went down to the tavern. The fresh tree was attracted by the warmth of the dishes, and above it a fragrant smell of dinner. Lisa with a neighbor wished a delicious, and the woman added that the guests had already covered a gorgeous table, where the smell of fresh bread mixed with fragrant herbs. The smell of fresh chips and spicy nuts removed the boys' fatigue. They happily rushed to the table, breathing deeply and thanking for treating. Taking the forks and touching the dishes, they tried the first piece. The taste exploded on the lips. The eyes opened from surprise. Happiness flashed in the look. Suddenly, tears swollen in the eyes of the young man. Unexpected, hot. They slowly rolled on their cheeks, pounding in their chest. Women inhaled the spicy aroma in surprise, seeing tears in the eyes of the boys, but they just smiled and waved their tears. It was so delicious that the soul sang. Haruto calmly explained that they recently ate only stale bread, and Lisa felt bitterly. The life of a seeker smells like damp, hunger, and constant fatigue. Karen tasted the dish, wondering. Not surprisingly, there are so many people here. The flavors are lazy from the street. Lisa thanked the pleasant words and added, "The city comes to life, and the characters are quite close." The affectionate voice was heard, and the faces of the heroes were pale. This phrase was cold, lay in a heavy burden. It was not at all what they were waiting. Haruto shouted loudly on the whole of the tract that they were real heroes, and the woman told, "The city of buzzing, waiting for them with the royal family. The rumor is spreading, the characters have conquered a new dungeon, and then, maybe Eden will get." The boys' views crossed. Silence rolled in the air, and only after being again in the room did they move between the shadows to understand what to do next. Everyone offered salvation and care. They advised to leave the city, but the hero gently explained. A few days before their arrival, suddenly disappeared dangerously. Let everything remain quietly. Nina was ahead of the battle with vile monsters, the clatter of weapons and the search for artifacts that could strengthen the demon's seal. Karen advised to entrust the search for artifacts to the heroes, and the doubt slid in the heart of the main. Whether the residents know about them at all, because Mina felt, the locals seem to be unaware of the seal in Eden. It is important to remember that you do not get all the monsters in a row. But our hero knew clearly who he could. Remember Yoche, whose unrestrained character either pulled into the mess or instantly rescued everyone. Karen slid on difficult tasks, in her stomach colds from anxiety, and some vague care lay on her heart. 2 narrow beds in the room, the boys are joked, then they win each other with their eyes, and she catches their nods and thinks how to share the night and blankets. At the same moment, Mina also looked shy in the other way, meeting with the hero's eyes. The mine intervened softly, tried to discharge the tension and asked how things were in Rai and his friends. Karen shuddered at the unexpected question. The boys have notified. Paradise and the rest are hidden in the woods, kept together thanks to telepathy. Watch each other. Once upon a time they had to sleep in the raw dungeons, where it was much worse. Karen was lost in guessing why they were here. The hero just smiled cunningly. It is easy not to voice, here you feel the skin. That's how the domestication works. Karen laughed. Does not every parent dream of such force? The characters heard it and understood. Apparently, it is. In a minute Karen realized they got lost somewhere far in the wild and struck, thundered on the table. Breaking out of place, I invite you to the bed. The thought will be drilled again. 3 of them, and the bed is only 2. The hero shrugged. They say, let the girls stand on the bed, and leaves a cold floor for himself. a difference of none to everyone. Mina's determination did not leave doubt. Karen also denied. In the views of the girls burned disagreement. And the hero, confused, did not know where to take a step further, as if stuck between two lightnings. Karen caught Chorito here for the main thing. He would rest, agreed by a mine. And the hero only surprisedly sawed, while the girls quickly decided where their journey went. In his thoughts, Gudo had a calm confidence. In the damp dungeons he had to sleep and worse. So the current inconveniences seemed like a trifle. The views of the girls pressed on their shoulders harder than words. It seemed that it was simply impossible to convince them with words. Karen was quietly on the floor. The blanket slid after. The war went around her side, so she did not fit a stranger under a star roof. But the mine interrupted, gently said that she would stay here. The forces are still enough. She will stand. Let them not worry. The hero, having intervened in a conversation, added with a light smile. Apparently he would be just on the floor. That's where the real silence in the cold of the night had to expect. In response, the girl, as one, was convinced, it will not be. And the guy only surprised caught their eyes, not understanding why they were so fierce with him. Karen persuaded the mine to lie on the bed, because she was the main one in the battle. But the mine was stubbornly standing. Her body still dreamed of a quiet rest that was not yet. Watching closely, the hero felt, the controversy reaches the darkness. But right now everything has been decided. In that fragile movement of air, in the lightning of other people's views. All you have to do is move the bed, and the places will become more for everyone, Nina was convinced. And Karen quietly agreed, barely smiling. Hearing these words, the young man first thought that someone's joke was too easy and easy to sound around. A deep night wrapped the room. 3 heroes quietly settled on the beds. The young man remained in the middle, 2 girls nearby. There is a barely whisper between them and breathing silence. The sleepless night was for the ages, and suddenly the mine was asked to remain silent. They say, everything was fine, although she was confused in her thoughts. Near Karen became recognized. The heart beats quieter than she expected. Under the joint blanket, in the silence of the night, a stranger's anxious pulse knocked on his ears, alive, exciting as a whisper before dawn. The smell of perfume mixed with the warmth of the body. 2 charming girls laughed quietly nearby, and he could not understand what the heart was pounding in his chest. Suddenly, Mine pressed the young man to himself. He first shuddered, felt the unexpected warmth and thought. Apparently, it was accidental. Mina was whispering that Haruto was too approaching, about the Kingen, and Karen, smiling maliciously, answered with a light movement he would withstand everything. Mina with a glance called Gudo to approach closer, but he just frozen in hesitance, was lost in her eyes, not knowing what to expect next. Karen advised to use the whole space, forcing the hero to feel pressure that the walls were shrinking in his back. 2 voices whisper his name, breathes a hot ear, and the guy seems to dissolve between them, not understanding why he was in the very center of this vortex. They did not go to bed yet, but already agreed. Who loses sleeps in the middle, and began to play in a stone-tailed paper. The onslaught of the fingers and laughter continued almost until dawn. The light flooded the room. The heroes drowned on the bed sleepily, silently catching their thoughts. And Karen, with the shimmering of a smile, did not hold back laughter over the boys' confusion. When everything was ready, the steps were taken to the forest, where I had to look for paradise, and those whom Karen never saw in the middle of green. The inquisitive look slid in the territories, smelled by anxiety in the air, and the hero assured the hero in a calm voice, he called them. They will appear. Hearing that they can be called, the hero smiled. The heart prompts the path. He feels more connected than any cry, although the usual way acts only at a short distance. Karen came to the question, whether the hero sees the feeling of his wards, and Mina, holding his breath, looked at him with hope and embarrassment. The hero only quietly confessed that he could not, and then a heavy breath escaped from her breast, like the wind tore an invisible burden from her shoulders. Suddenly, somewhere nearby, he was in dance of dust, laughter, and screams. He recognized the familiar voices of his friends. The tiger flew ahead, roaring the silence, and the crowd of monsters behind him was a heavy hum. The girls felt a squeezing heart. That's really bad. At that moment, the tiger rushed forward and hit the young man, throwing it into the dust straight to the ground. The surprise did not retreat. The creatures were rushed around the hero, each thirsty to touch. It was a lot to be tamed, as if feeling a gentle call in the air. Karen carefully watched whether the hero would be able to accept everyone, and he gently explained, Everyone here is looking for his own Eden, and, watching how new monsters are alert, he involuntarily decided, let them go nearby. Everything had to be organized by itself. But by watching the fussy crowd, Mina with confidence decided that it was possible to break through with such force, and he mentally agreed with her. The hero reached out to the wild creatures again, and curbed one by one. Sweat flowed through his temples, the heart was streaming, and in the end, all the monsters obeyed his will. The feeling of exhaustion covered the guy with a wave, as if they were leaning through his fingers. And the girls took him again, his feet. He barely touched the earth, holding on to his last breath. It was at this moment that they noticed another monster. It stood silently, studying the hero with an intrusive look, and the young man felt, this creature is special. Something is wrong in it. It turned out to be a white dragon like Minanaso, and Karen added, there were also small dragons, and it looked surprisingly sweet, with a glitter in the eyes and a light breath of warmth. It was at the moment when the domestication ended. Something invisible squeezed the hero's breasts. The unusual force ran through the skin. Mina felt it too, and the dragon suddenly looked more powerful than others. At that moment, the mind realized. Though he was small, but still a dragon, and Karen noticed, he had to name him. The hero agreed, and gently called, Ruer, and the little dragon looked carefully and murmured something in response. It was at the moment when the name was born that the dragon wings shook in the air, lifting dust and cold wind, the breath of breathing in the chest, and suddenly the dragon grabbed the young man, splashing the air with a hot blow, and carried him into the unknown. The mind glanced at Haruto, Karen swayed, and the hero was touching the roost to stop. It is dangerous, and the dragon was just having fun, waving his wings. The next moment, the wings were picked up by the hero, taken out high into the sky, and suddenly released. The heart fell, and under the feet spread out the endless blue and a sip of wind. The incredible picture was fascinating. Mina noticed how he was hanging in the air, and the girls glanced at Haruto in surprise. He looked at a bright, pulsating city in silence. From a height, everything seemed like a fairy tale. The heart rejoiced, his eyes were joyfully sliding in colors and forms, as if he were flying in a dream. But it is at that moment that a fierce force, acute, like a blade, flies through the body. It crumbles on 1,000 debris, although it is still heard in the ears of a crazy hum. The bitter taste of fear spilled into the mouth. Here it is, the shadow of close death, which the guy recognized immediately. In the depths of the forest, the hand stood silently, the same from which it seems that it came to him an invisible, anxious feeling. The heroes return to the city tired, and the guild grows in front of them, a huge, framed columns, proud and unexpectedly light in the evening sun. The road to Eden began with registration, strict views, hum in the air. Someone checked the guild with the heroes, but Karen knew. Supporting the family kingdom filmed all these formalities. Minnie's eyes flashed with curiosity. Will the prince know about them if they register? The guild lives separately from the royal family, so there was hope that everything would go through. Karen eagerly caught every word, wishing their data to be a secret. It is good that they listened to the lectures of guilds earlier. It would save from troubles through an unauthorized hike in the dungeon. But the hand that looked from under the trees made the hero rush. Karen's gaze lingered in that place. Behind her there glanced and Mina. The young man said that the seal was about to fall. Only a little time remained. The guild doors opened, and the woman met the travelers with a smile, registered them, and then, sliding her palms on the tabletop, handed brilliant cards. Registration succeeded. Karen first was waiting for the check, but the woman, feeling the powerful energy that was war from Haruto and Mina, only smiling gently. It was superfluous, she said. Before leaving, it was necessary to keep alert. Lately on the threshold of the dungeons will be a high level of high-level demons, and each breath smells of danger. Tamina whispers quietly and pinches it by the hand. It is necessary to hurry, to collect artifacts immediately. The hero nods uncertainly, feeling in his palm hot in a hurry. The woman advised, if you are looking more about Eden, talk to the informant. The hero looked carefully at her, trying to catch the real meaning of these words. The informant moved the glass closer. The look is attentive, silent, and suddenly comes an awareness. He wants 3 doctors from them. Hearing this, the young man glanced in surprise. The man only shrugged and explained. He was a fee for information, because he is not like a benefactor. The coins rolled in his palm, and the man looked carefully at the guests. In his gaze, his curiosity was playing as if he had already guessed. They needed a map of Eden or a secret about demons. The hero said that he needed information about the center of the dungeon, and suggested adding another coin to payment, removing it from his hand. Everyone around the breath, watching every movement carefully. One look of the man around the crowd stopped him. He just asked to do without gold, as if he had felt that otherwise there would be a disaster. Looking at these people, he felt that they did not wait for the adventures of the gifts. Only the shadow of the loss flashed in their eyes. Paying for the boys, he explained quietly. He has no such information, because no one has returned from that place. He added, if they return with the living, they must come to him, to tell a generous fee about depths. But the heroes felt in vain to wait for this man of truth. Guild doors remained behind. The city called on the road, and the hero stressed, there is a map at hand, so the path leads to Eden Paradise, as Karen guessed. Short silence, and the hero explained that magic still knows tired after the morning, so you can only move at dawn when the forces return with the first rays. Karen, escaping, looked around and quit with a smile. Why not wandering the city, catching hot moments to leave a trace of these days in memory forever? Seeing the Karen funny, the characters raise their eyebrows and rush, punching and catching her shabby mood on the fly. The road called them further. Bright showcases, shops are full of incense, laughter, a ringing of the city's buzzing, and a slow viewing of amazing treasures under the sun. At the break, Karen scared the mine spiders from the store, and the heroine only laughed and watched lightly for this action, without bringing her eyes off from the tiny paws that cleverly crawled on the palm. One day, the street noise retreated when they entered the store. Between the hanger and the mirrors, Karen hesitated, and the magic cloak tried on, and the mine twisted a hat like a real sorceress. The primary full laughter, short, bold skirts tickle their knees, and minds are embarrassed, hides the cheeks in the palms, and it seems that even the air here swells pink embarrassment. Then, putting something like swimwear, Mina shyly took her eyes off the mirror, and the hero, not hesitating for a long time, tried only a funny suit that resembled a bear from his native land. Outside, the boys greedily caught every taste of life. They laughed, worn in the panic, and the world seemed to be full of unexpected pleasures. At the city market, there were so many smells and colors. Karen gathered a treasure basket, dreamed of cooking from them potions on the race, and the hero quietly hoped that the taste of the potion would be fabulous. If it helps, she will try, noticed the girl. The guy laughed, and the mine only looked at them in surprise without understanding. Suddenly, the gaze touched a bright sign. Here, hot springs. In the hearts of the heroes, joy broke out, as if the house had passed the smell of steam and a slight longing for his native. The smell of sulfur was pinching the nostrils. Karen glowed with joy, seeing these hot springs for the first time. Mina was also surprised to look around and plunged into warmth together, laughing at happiness. One against the band. The hero steps on the male side, lonely among other people's views and predatory smiles. Question voices like a hail fall out. Who are you? Where? Why here? There is a sharp tension and bitter sadness inside. After a grueling day, the girls dived into hot springs. The couple rose above the water. The skin was gratefully felt warm. Everything was quiet around. Only the squirts and the light laughter was heard on this good night. Karen did not know how charming would be among the hot splashes, and the mine agreed because she had not felt so clean and updated for a long time. Warm water gently hugged the girls, and the tension disappeared. The mine was a little embarrassed. While Karen was relaxed in the wave, the smile slid her lips. The mine cast a quick look at Karen, and had fun that it was a miracle. To see her without clothes, Karen froze with surprise, not understanding why the mine said it. It was then that Mina noted how gently smooths the breasts, considering Karen's bends, and understood that Karen did not seek to stand out, just did not want to be different among girls. Warm breathing touched Karen's face. Girlfriend guessed. The heart asked for confession. There was no point in hiding. After a long time, she explained. In their world, she loved the cosplay, and Mina, catching this detail, stared at Karen, as if she was waiting for her whole world of hobbies. Karen, with a smile, confessed. In narrow circles, she is known thanks to photos. Breasts and goggles are only an attempt not to be recognized, and it is still recognized in the streets often. Even now, it was awkward to talk about it. She shook her head timidly, smiled guilty, and in his thoughts, everything seemed a silly history. In the ears of the mines, strange words were heard. Nothing was understood. Only the surprise was stroking in the chest. Karen, noticing the admiration in the girlish voice, was surprised even more, because she did not expect such a reaction. It is probably that the mine would not grab the meaning. She spoke to a mine, and wondered how sincerely and believed it. Mina really believed that it is incredibly warm on the skin. To become known as the girl added, it was very cool, quietly sank into warm water next to the Karen. The tension receded, and Karen gave her a smile. A quiet, cozy pause, in which the water gently slammed against the shores. The unexpectedness broke out in the words of Karan, and Mina tried to catch the meaning in a confusion. He studied her attentive look, as if he asked if she was confident in herself, and for the mine, her past seemed pure, despite the wonder of the situation. The concern was left side by side, confident in herself, and suddenly she wanted to tell about the unexpected. She liked that Haruto was surprisingly capable. The hot air hugged, the couple spirals circled, and it was then that the hero found a common language with the men sitting nearby in the font. To hear it, and Mina puzzled raise eyebrows, not shaking what is good in Gyudo. And Karen, catching tension, hurriedly asks not to perceive everything literally. Stretching, Karen added. The trail was difficult, but Haruto was serious and reliable, and Mina suddenly felt, others also see it, and that's really so. And then she added, the young man was always like that. It ignited the curiosity of Karen, and the girl, holding her breath, wanted to know more about the real Rudo. The light splash of water in the palms, the memories smell of rain. The mind sighs and whispers, as Haruto took care of the kid on the street, looking for the owner of the kitten, hoping that one of the adults would be healed. So came to the Karen. Lisa from the Tractrier is clearly sympathetic to him. The children also adore, and he only calmly puts up with whims. Apparently he simply bribes his Lolita style. The mind stopped, looked around in a confused, lips are quietly moving. It is quite unclear what is about. Breaking out of the place, Mina screamed, trying to understand Karen's approaches, and Karen smiled ominously with the edge of her lips, and said calmly that somewhere in the world she didn't have to be a little girl. The look glowed with desire. Probably he would definitely like such a thing. When the store was stepping, the guy even asked the saleswoman about these costumes, and the mine only silently swayed and cast a confused look at the girlfriend. When the joke subsided, Karen did not take the words of Haruto seriously. In her voice the remnants of a smile were swollen, and the air of the verse smelled of disbelief. Mina, slowly calming down, dropped nearby and only now noticed. Karen was right. If Haruto really had success in girls, would he stay alone, as she still thought? Karen looked when she heard a heavy sigh of mine. After a short silence, Karen said quietly that the girl simply did not feel someone else's feelings, which is why she thinks about him. The coincidence of the words knocks a mine from the panthelic. She is lost in the guesses. But in a whisper, Karen asks Karen to tell more about this mysterious person. Emotions escaped from the outside. The mine grabbed Karen and shaking tried to quench the wave. And Karen, barely smiling, said that everything was too noticeable. It was not possible to take indifferent. Karen's cheeks flashed with a blush. She suddenly fell silent, and an unspoken question trembled in her head. The smell of evening tea hung in the room when a question was finally taken out. Does Karen recognize what Haruto likes? The girl's cheeks broke out of shame, and Karen also smiled, quietly explaining that he is only a friend for her, and nothing more. Only after hearing these words from Karen, the mind could not look away. She caught every movement, looked, whether the truth was swelling in the look. From the eyelashes, Karen swayed from her gaze. He nodded and barely audibly whispered, "Yes, that's true." Karen recalled a Mini when she first removed his glasses. The guy lifted his eyebrows in surprise, and Mina did not see anything strange. Just a girl suddenly changed his appearance. Karen whispered softly, "That's all." Mina realized what was saying. The heart was silently prompted. The simple Haruto did not attract it, and these words were finally sounded. As soon as the freshness of water and a towel, the hero was dressed, and in front of him stood the same men. One promised a meeting, the other sent an air kiss and jokingly called his suite. This evening it faded smoothly. In the golden throne, where it smelled of wax and tree, King Hill's Elmadon listens to the news. Another dungeon is conquered, Rex reports, and the prince stands in front of the throne, like a statue among the flames of torches. Low bow to the father, all thanks to the heroes of their strength, who have already compared with the brave warriors of the continent, the young man explains, and in his voice is heard pride. Among the heroes of the Shadow Detachment, Joey, Kakaru, and Mega, the names are immersed in reflections, the reward should be thanked. But how will a new disaster appear? He said it aloud without noticing the cunning smile of the prince. The king imagined, "You will keep the heroes under one roof. They will say strengthens the army. Immediately other people's tongues will respond." And he sighed hard in alarm, finding a confusion of what to do now. People humbled. They were already aware of the words of the prince. And when he heard it, the king looked closely at his son, catching in his eyes an alarming hint of what to be afraid. The prince added that the seal of a 200-year-old demon was about to tear. And in these words, his face was squeezed by a bitter grimace, like a taste of ash on his lips. At that moment, somewhere deftly, as if the earth had a hard time under her feet, the news flew to the king. He was looking for answers whether it was really concerning him. People whispered in the terrible times when the damage was countless, and the guy confirmed quietly, "Everything is the same as they say, a real disaster." The place where the seal is hidden was lost with the dead heroes of the past, in the battle with the demon. The king then thought, and the prince only assured, "They know everything they need. There is no point in worrying." Looking at his son, his father said softer, "All this is good, but a difficult thing. It is not necessary to throw his head." So he thought. Agreeing with his father, the prince thought herself for weakness and called himself an old fool, feeling shame and anger under the skin. The prince and Step did not have time to step. He planned to collect a detachment, already turned around. But the harsh voice of his father stopped. What else does the king want to know? What is looking for in his eyes? The father, anxious and nervous, tried to catch his intention to break the seal in his son. It was enough to strengthen her, and no battle would be needed. The prince, with the shadow of dissatisfaction in his voice, remarked, "To call the heroes, not just wave their hand. It goes on forces, and not everyone will cope." It was necessary to resolve this issue once and for all, until the courage had yet to be extinguished. The demon had to bend so that he never approached again. The father listened to his son, not fully understanding, but felt dangerous. But in addition, the prince showed that the seal will not return, the old wax will not lie, there will be cracks and the smell of anxiety. Listening to these words, the father tried to tread the content of the conversation, and the prince added, "Only the hero with holy power could be able to reconcile." And the king said with faith, "He who possesses this gift." Only the ink on paper reminded. The forces seemed to be rolled up, and only the shadow of despair was quietly shaking the air. The news was frightened by the king. He suddenly realized why the girl did not dare. When the prince invited Felicia to dance next to him, his sister was already trembling, standing quite close. The girl explained, "The Shadow Squadron is the hero of the very heart of the castle, the elite among the elected, and he knows about it." 80 breaths of hope went on the way, but only 55 returned home, bringing with them the loss and silence of the lived. Magumi could treat, but death was depressing her. She still stumbled on her soul, faded from what she was not ready for. Hot breathing, the king added. The characters are sometimes fragile, like a fragile glass. Even their courage sounds in a little way. She was born in the world without wars and losses. This thought was voiced by an unexpected guest, and in the air smelled anxiety. The prince cast a dissatisfied look. The princess blossomed with surprise, and the king turned sharply. Age appeared in front of them. The king studied his face carefully, looking for emotions, but his age just shrugged. They say, "Everything is well," with his father too, and slowly approached, joining the conversation. In the air, the smell of coffee was felt, and his father studied his eyes carefully, worrying what his son would say about it. He was extremely interesting to know the truth. Rumors of misery have long reached Vic, and he was sure the demon could be locked, hidden behind a strong fracture of magical silence. The brother's words of ashes settled in the soul of the prince, and he, holding his breath, listened to each subsequent sound, trying not to lose a single note. The idea of why the brother decided to seal it right now did not rest. Did he really have no idea why all this was needed? The demon was locked in Eden, he dropped briefly. Words like cold water forced Rex to shudder. It became clear, the age has long solved everything. Hearing about it for the first time, his father broke out of his chair in surprise, anxiety and demand in his voice. He wanted the Rex of truth. The unknown rings in the air like a string. A short pause, and Rex's thoughts are no longer looking for a way out. Snatering his head, he admits, "Yes, everything is really as it is. To the capital from Eden." To give a hand, no rumors about the demons came from there. Rex asked for himself where his brother learned everything, and his age only threw a few words about employment with politics. He had only to collect news about evil, and closest to Eden, as everyone knew, noise-trading cask. At that moment, Rex thought, and the age easily, almost whispered, said, he knows that Rex captures the deeds of Larson Krobny, and everything changes, and time is not standing still. Portraits, face in the shadows, frozen on the wall. The father looked, sighed, and added about Lard Larson, it has been half a century since he went into eternity. The destruction of whole tribes of demons, sealed with a real dragon. Feats are immense. The shadow of glory stretched further than the father could imagine, and the guy thought added a number of victories. Age believed that he would overcome the demon, but the uncertainty squeezed her breasts. Would the new hero be heated? At that moment, Rex from anger clenched his fists, threw his bones under the skin. The father quietly added, without a Magum, which seems to fall in bed, it is impossible to impose a seal. Now, and he realized himself, turning to his father and prince, Age asked for permission to treat her, and these words with electrical discharge went through his faces, surprise and an unexpected breath in the air. He also added, a girl cannot recover a lot of time, but perhaps his support will help her take off higher pain and anxiety. The princess, having heard about this power of her brother, suddenly blossomed with a smile, smelled in the air with hope. The guards whispered that Mr. Age would solve everything, and then silence prevailed in the camp. But only for Rex did these conversations be itchy in his chest. He annoyed this weak brother without the right to the throne. He appeared in a timely manner, breaking plans, and this annoyance remained in a bitter taste. Rex burned his brothers with his eyes, his heart squeezed with hatred, and laughing around, and every joyful face only stirred anger like the wind. The only thing that was in mind in the head is the power. The force is needed otherwise. To prove that he can, so it is time to move to Eden, he decided. His heart was killed faster. The air trembled from waiting. The hand that looked from the ground where Eden once was, the hero's gaze kept. In silence while the girl slept, he thought, tomorrow we need to go there. Before the eyes of the heroes, the entrance to Eden looks like a festive pavilion, filled with a noise and a nut smell among the crowd, which was vigorously at the door. Lisa suddenly noticed them and was surprised. In front of her were the ones she heard about. The characters also looked at the girl in the middle of the room. Views cross, surprise in the air, and Lisa says quietly, she only works the way, that's all. The girl added quietly, the boys should look at the hand where she showed, because not only adventurers come here, even tourists come to her souvenir shop hidden under the old roof. In a moment, the girl, having displayed all her treasures, suggested buying something, and the hero noticed a statuette. On it, the face of their classmates frozen on it. Mine was breathtaking. The statuette was already created. There was a Magum nearby, a little further flicked with the new equipment of Namb and Akamoto, and Karen whispered, everyone had fresh weapons. Seeing the fire of curiosity in their eyes, the girl extended the statuette closer, eagerly nodded her head. Do not hesitate. Choose. This talisman is worthy of attention. The heroes, who were bored and sweaty, were asked to apologize and explain the confusion. Time to say goodbye. They would meet later. Lisa only glanced and said goodbye. Friends did not understand. Why so? Why can't anyone get past? It is worthwhile near the gate. You have enough strength. You must raise the enemy of the guild. The indignation breaks into the views. The fists are clenched nervously. The groups of adventure searches, pouring swearing on all sides, parted. Mina with comrades saw it, and immediately began to whisper, as if the wings were trembling. The Mindverse whispered that it was not good. New ones have not yet managed to raise their rank, but the hero assured, there is paradise, there are other ways, the spare option will find. And Karen closely monitored the silent guard. Above the heroes of the guard, through the grinding of its wings slowly seeped the cold, as if the cloud of shadows were preparing to change the world. The light smile slid along the mouth. He understood before him the adventurers, and calmly asked to show a guild card. It was blinking. The hero stretched out the cards. His hands trembled, the look full of hope and shame. Looking at, the guard silently retreated from the door. He invited a gesture, and the gates with a glow rushed directly in front of the heroes. The doubt swallowed the hero. The fear was shaking in his chest, whether he could overcome, because their rank remained low, and the keeper whispered, the rank is only a label, no more. There are no reasons to deny those who have strength in the eyes. Let them only remember caution, he added with a quiet request. Only opened the gate. The thick forest met with rustle, silver air. None of these huts returned. the security guard exposed, locking the door behind his backs. Leaving behind the fears of darkness, the hero felt the cold in his chest. It was necessary to hurry with the artifacts to restore the seal of force. And this is what prompted to move further, where he heard a step of time. It was here that the door dissolved into the room. After Yowai appeared all his fraternity, and behind them the elder and the prince. Everyone looked around anxiously, trying to understand why they were here. And here the elder realized, the triumph in the helmet waits for him in a few days. Because there were no other heroes in this village, only a loud moon of steps and the smell of iron in the wind. In fact, the last dungeon was only a warm-up, added prince, and the excitement of future adventures caught fire in their eyes. The news about the warm-up and how much effort had to be given to victory over it, the boys were surprised. In the eyes there was a surprise, and in the air was short. Is it possible? The prince calmly explained. The dead are only a burden, so this time they will train the selected, and he is sure. Right now, Eden will be subdued. Hearing about Eden, the headman only shrugged, not understanding, and Joe suggested, apparently it is a dungeon. The prince smiled slightly, hiding the truth, and confirmed, yes, it is the most difficult dungeon in the world. Only one level, annoyingly short, and now the boss is barely audible by the turn. There are minutes to meet him. Glory breathes between these walls. It is here that you can feel her breath and create her own legend. At first, Joki got up, grabbed the prince by his shoulder. Why to turn up, when and so did they gain glory, conquering the last dungeon? Drawings did not believe. Is it not enough? Will not all colors and lines that came to life under their fingers will be satisfied? Suddenly, he confessed. In Eden actually locked the demon. After these words in the air alarm, and the boys looked at each other with surprise. He was whispered about the demon. Yoche shuddered, and the prince thought, so the guy had already anticipated the misery, because he did not convince. Everyone would return back into his world. The elder could not be tired. If everything is so serious, why no preparation? It smells an anxiety. It is necessary to strengthen others first. The prince added with confidence that he was right, so they had to be. And he could not understand why the prince's desire was so persistent and knocked in his temples. He explained to this. If all 27 heroes get the title of a real hero, this time they will be ease. The weight will leave the shoulders, as if a heavy cloak would fall down. It cannot be allowed. Only real heroes will remain in the world, and only their names will whisper the wind through years. The boys really deserve it, he thought, and the prince exploded so fervently that he even scared everyone. The voice swept the air involuntarily. The elder sighed and added, of course all this is cool and there is one but. The prince caught the last thread of their pain and added calmly, even Tsutsui, along with their moving to Eden. Hearing these words, the surprise only increased. In the air, an alarming silence stuck in the air, as if someone suddenly broke the bell of surprise. Joey tried to understand whether our hero would risk going to this maze, and the prince said that the scout in the helmet reported that the grave managed to capture, and it seemed incredible. The thoughts of the 7th dungeon and the stronger rivals were spinning in the head of Yoki, and suddenly the head of the village calmly assured, this is not true. The intelligent views of old age were rushing around the room. As soon as others learn about their connection with the disappearance of Suitsui, everything they lived will destroy as if in a moment. But the prince already knew that they were suspected. That is why they appeared here, silent and decisive, pressing their breath in the cool air. You can take a moment, take the risk, hide the traces. And it was at this moment that the elder opened his mouth to say something. But the voice of the prince came as if through silence. They had to do it. There was no other way out. It was at this moment that the prince dramatically changed the course of the battle. His beloved reception broke out in the air, like a lightning in the middle of thunder. The strength in his eyes blinded the elder and Yokius. The hypnotic voice whispered to act and rescue the kingdom, as if the wind itself was ordered through the thick air. As soon as his strength was in them, the views of the boys became empty, like glass. Yoche was looking for a way to stop and kill the enemy, and the elder squeezed his fists from rage to our hero. When the work glowed with perfection, the prince nodded to go on. A slight anxiety and the anticipation of a new step were hung in the air. At the same moment, the prince caught the look of the tiger, and the red beast, noticing the traces, rushed to the side, cutting the air with wool and pads. The sudden explosion broke the air somewhere on the other side, when Haruto, captured by the battle with another monster, feverishly sought the answer that it was for the monster. From the sky a rush fell rapidly. The dragon swept into Haruto, and friends rushed to meet her. In the air, anxiety smelled. The hero felt immediately. Something happened. The heard words of Ruhrus suddenly walked on the young man's shoulders, as if in the middle of a warm summer sky. He even caught his breath from surprise. The hero's eyebrows moved. Anxiety flashed on his face, and Mina realized something happened. The hero quickly whispered that the enemy attacked Rai and others, and the mine was struck by this news. The hero is barely smelling of anxiety. The aid will be useful, but in response, a quiet, like a rustle of leaves in the wind. No help is needed. The warm whisper of a familiar voice from behind forced the heart to tremble. The characters turned and saw the guards in the shine of scaly armor. The Guardian newspaper reported, found a group of Tutsui. The hero immediately caught the people of the prince, and the situation smells of trouble. If they are already here, then paradise and the rest could fall under the gray sky, and only bitter air reminds it. It was at this moment that the magical radio came from the magical radio. Not to give the team to restore strength in any way. Now the hero understood everything. This Rex managed every step. It was at this moment that the commander noticed among the crowd of Kakaru and Yoche. The heroes were here, and the heart was immediately faded. Were they really allowed to step into the maze? All you have to do is touch the silence, as the guard said. The main demon has already been overcome. It is better not to interfere. And our hero is going to ban the path. The warriors united around weapons. The changing light of the lamp slid on unfamiliar faces. Not only the guards were chatting here, and our hero noticed. These are other warriors, and Karen felt something wrong with them. When Mina said Haruto to go, in his head the bells were surprised. He did not realize what this girl asks for. She assured that everyone will take care of everyone, because he should help the rest of the inhabitants of paradise. And in the meantime Haruto squeezed his fists, wanting to stop the girls. They were asked to believe and move together, as Mina suggested, and Karen quietly supported. The girls were glowing with sincerity, and the hero, happy, sincerely thanked them. The heart was suddenly filled with warmth. Grasping his hands, slid up and dissolved in a noisy crowd, disappearing from his eyes for a moment, as if a shadow in an evening dream. Of course, neither the keeper nor the others anticipated the disappearance of the hero, and immediately rushed to the man, desperately seeking to stop his rapid flight. But here the mine intercepted him with a fire spear. She stopped alert, because now all sounds should sound. But silence remained elastic and alarming. The girl assured, "We'll remain here and we'll fight until the end, because they have to repay the debts of the past." Of course, it was funny to hear about the guards from the girl, but she added, "They became stronger, but the boys still have advantage." Looking back, the girls saw the warriors not only plead on the field, they sat on thick branches, hiding in thick rabbits, surviving on all sides, and Karen faded, looking for her eyes, where they came from so much. The guard said, "It was those who will be folded here for money, walking herds, stronger and cunning, and the girl did not have the strength to cope with them." At that moment Karen looked at Nina, and Nina hugged her firmly and added her, "But they know nothing. We have a potion. You prepared it. It made us stronger." In front of the warriors, a fire Titana suddenly grew up, so giant that his shadow should lie on the city, glittering aflame in the morning haze. The surprised guard opened her eyes wide, and Mina said with a smile, "You just underestimated us." In a moment, the flames took all the opponents. The mine breathed hot air, understandable. The amount does not matter, and it is time to run. Rolling through the crowd of enemies, they, without moving, rushing to Garatose aid on a burning Pegasus, just to the place where the hero had to be. The wind whistled in his ears, and the smoke remained behind. Meanwhile, among the whistle and roar, the hero overtook everyone. The stealthily monitored how the principal with the brutal shadows fought, caught the alarming and rattles of the blades. Shurchite under his feet. Yoga catches an unfamiliar look and is in vain to understand why Tsutsui was in this place. Before the battle, ripe herbs smelled of ripe grasses, and summer and paradise were watched with sadness, as if they were saying goodbye to the hero, full of anxiety. It was barely why they were looking so, as through the smoke and the roar, the hero noticed. Some of his monsters were already defeated. The boys coped with them. A trembling breath in his chest, the guy turned to Yokius, but he just looked away and remained silent, as if he was difficult for him to confess. The smell of no confidence filled the air when the hero stubbornly demanded the answer, and Joey just smiled at the predatory, "I am sure that he faces not just a fool, but also blind. Who else could be the culprit except them?" In the look of Yocheus, who burned unbearable madness, anxiety broke through. Our hero of the backgrounds from anger. But Karen and Mina had already rushed to help to keep from fatal steps.